So imagine a door so massive it feels like it's guarding the end of the world. That's the entrance to hero ship, and let me tell you, it's not a prize, it's the worst prison sentence ever. And here's the crew of misfits serving that sentence. They look like a bunch of badasses, but they're basically disposable soldiers sent to fight an endless war against demons. We start out in the middle of the freezing Kuvenge forest at night. You can practically feel the wind biting through the trees, man. Check out this kid, Dada Lysilas. He's a former petty thief turned hero, and he is already freaking out big time. He knows something bad is coming. He's huddled by a campfire, begging his partner Zyro for some advice because he thinks he's totally cooked this time. Zyro just gives him this look, like he's way too tired to deal with Dada's panic attacks right now. Meet Zyro for Bart's. He's the tall, cool-headed one, but honestly, he looks like he hasn't slept in about 3 years. He straight up tells Dada he doesn't have the time or the patience to listen to him whine. Cold, right? They're just sitting there on logs, and Zyro tries to get Dada to focus on their actual mission for once. Dada just goes silent, probably realizing that Zyro isn't going to give him any sympathy today. Dada's eyes are practically popping out of his head as he realizes they're supposed to go fight a literal demon lord. Zyro just nods. He's completely unbothered, which honestly makes him even more intimidating. Then he drops the bomb. The demon lord has created 5,000 fairies, and it's just the two of them tasked with handling it. Dada is literally wilting under the weight of that news. The gloom is real, guys. Zyro just stares him down. He knows the odds are garbage, but he's already accepted his fate. He reminds Dada that they aren't real heroes, they're just criminals working off their sentences on the front lines. And check those marks on his neck. Those are sacred seals. They act like a leash, making sure they can't disobey or run away. Zyro gets real intense and says they aren't even allowed to die until their duty is fulfilled. Talk about a rough contract. So he tells Dada they need to be smart and come up with a plan instead of just sitting around crying about it. But Dada is still insistent. He shouts that Zyro needs to look at something because it's seriously bad news. Dada jumps up and yanks a cloth off this huge thing he's been dragging around. It's making a lot of noise as he reveals it. And boom! It's a fancy, decorated coffin. Dada is like, what are we gonna do about this? Like he didn't steal it himself. Cyrus' face is just, wow. He's completely stunned that Dada would pull something like this right now. He puts his hand to his forehead and asks the most logical question. Dada, why on earth did you steal a coffin? Dada starts wailing, explaining that he saw how gorgeous the box was, and his old thief instincts just kicked in before he could stop himself. Zyro is just staring at him like he's the world's biggest moron. He can't believe this kid sometimes. See, Dada was a legendary petty thief. Even being sentenced to hero ship didn't fix his sticky fingers. He's just a magnet for trouble. Zyro gets a really bad feeling and asks if there's actually someone inside that thing. Dada admits he wondered why it was so heavy while he was lugging it through the woods, so he finally took a peek inside. Zero starts screaming at him. He's totally losing it because bringing a dead body to their camp is basically an invitation for bad luck. He lets out a massive, soul-crushing sigh. Dealing with Dada is a full-time job in itself. He looks at how expensive the coffin is and guesses the person inside must be some super important royalty or a noble. He knows that as soon as people realize it's gone, there's going to be absolute chaos. He starts to pry it open. They get the lid off, and wow, inside is a beautiful young girl with long hair, sleeping peacefully like nothing is wrong. Euro is shocked into silence. He looks like he's seen a ghost, or maybe something even scarier. Then he notices that sacred seal on her body. It's glowing with a strange energy. Dada is still guessing she's royalty, but Zyro is looking way past that. He knows exactly what he's seeing. He turns to Dada and says, "No, she isn't even human. Talk about a plot twist." He tells Dada he's pretty sure this kid is a literal goddess. You know, just a casually discovered ancient deity in a box. Dada is just standing there with his jaw on the floor. He can't wrap his head around it. Zyro explains that goddesses were living arsenals created by the ancients. They were mankind's greatest weapons against demon lords, and there were only 12 of them. Dada asks if they're all supposed to look like little girls, which is a fair question, honestly. Zyro says they take bizarre forms. Some look like giant whales or huge hunks of iron. They're way too complicated for humans to really get. But if she's a genuine goddess, Yoro knows they are in massive trouble, like world-ending levels of trouble. He tells Dada to take it back to wherever he found it right now. He is not about to deal with an ancient weapon waking up. Suddenly, Shiro stops and looks sharp. His eyes narrow as he senses something shifting in the woods. The trees are rustling nearby. Something big is moving through the shadows toward them. A massive booming sound echoes through the forest, shaking the ground. Zero and Dada look up, totally caught off guard. Shiro gets low and asks Dada if he can see the fairies. He's got that focus battle look now. Dada uses his eagle eyes to scan the area. He spots a detached unit of monsters in the southeast corner. And then he sees them, the Holy Knights. He shouts out in surprise, recognizing the human soldiers. Shiro looks deadly serious. This is exactly what he was afraid of. See, the Holy Knights are the heavy hitters for the Federated Kingdom, the last hope for mankind. They were built to protect the goddess, but they realized they couldn't win this fight and started to pull back. They're currently fighting a losing battle against the Demon Lord phenomenon. Zero remembers their orders. They have to support the retreating troops and make sure at least half of them escape alive. He knows if they fail or try to run, those seals on their necks will literally torture them to death. No pressure, right? He looks down, his face in shadow. He knows exactly how this is going to end. He tells Dada they basically have a 0% chance of success here. He's always so uplifting, isn't he? It's an army of 2,000 knights against 5,000 fairies. The odds are just plain garbage. Dada is shivering, terrified the fairies are going to slaughter them all. Zyro just sighs, looking exhausted. He reminds Dada that even if they die, it's not the end of their sentence. The kingdom isn't done with them yet. He explains that even after they're killed, the kingdom will just collect their body parts and stuff them into boxes. Then they'll just resurrect them and send them right back out to fight. It's a never-ending cycle of misery. Dada thinks being brought back to life sounds okay, even if they get minced into patties. Yoro just says, you don't get it. He tells them it's not going to be pretty if they die in this specific spot. Dada is confused. He doesn't see what the big deal is if they just get revived anyway. Zero goes into the gory details. If they get turned into minced meat, or if their bodies aren't mostly intact, the resurrection has some nasty side effects. This forest is about to be totally contaminated by the Demon Lord. With all the snow, the Holy Knights will have a terrible time even finding their corpses. Dada is absolutely losing it. His face is stuck in a permanent scream of horror. Zero bluntly tells him he'd be better off hanging himself from a branch so his body doesn't get buried and lost. Gee, thanks, Zero. Suddenly, Zero gasps as he sees something happening down in the clearing. Down below, a small group of knights is being completely surrounded by those massive monsters. It looks like a slaughterhouse. Zero points it out to Dada, asking him if he can see what's going down. He's getting into combat mode. Dada looks through his binoculars and realizes they might already be too late to do anything. Shiro grabs the binoculars and peers through them himself, his face hardening as he watches the carnage. He adjusts the focus, squinting as he sees the knights struggling to hold their ground. A giant frog monster just chomps down on a knight's head. There's blood splattering everywhere. It's absolutely brutal. Knights are lying face down in the snow, their swords dropped. They're getting completely wiped out. The monsters are jumping all over the place, crushing the human defenses like they're made of paper. Zyro's eyes are wide with shock. You can almost hear his heart thumping against his ribs. He lowered the binoculars, realizing that most of the knights down there are already goners. He tells Dada they have two choices, run or hide until it's over, because they definitely can't save everyone now. But then he stops, his face going still. He's starting to think about another option. He pulls the binoculars back up to his eyes and mutters that not all of them are dead just yet. He's got that scary grin going again. Dada is completely stunned. He can't believe Big Zyro is even considering getting involved in that mess. He tries to convince Zyro that they should just end it themselves and call it a day. He is terrified, man. Zyro looks out over the forest, pointing out that every life they save increases their own chances of succeeding on the mission. He lowers the binoculars again and says, besides, he admits he's actually in the mood to kill some fairies himself. He looks like a total predator right now. He's made up his mind. He says, let's fight, we're saving them. Zyro tells Dada it's time to move, even though Dada is still whining that it's a terrible idea. Suddenly, a tiny voice from behind them says, "Ait." Zero freezes, looking over his shoulder. The voice says, "Fight," again. It's coming from right behind them. The lid of the coffin suddenly pops open with a heavy sound. Zyro and Dada jump back, totally startled. A small hand reaches out and grabs the side of the coffin. Someone is definitely waking up inside. The girl rises up out of the coffin, surrounded by a swirling aura of energy. She looks like she just heard everything they said. She stands tall, her long hair billowing around her. She looks at Zyro and says, "It appears you are my knight." Zyro is staring at her in complete shock. He looks like he's just seen a miracle or a nightmare. He realizes he was right, she really is a literal goddess. Her eyes are glowing with a weird intensity. She looks at the two of them and says, "Very well," like she's just granted them some huge favor. She steps out onto the ground with a soft sound, her eyes fixed on the battle ahead. She asks if the battle is about to begin. She seems weirdly excited about it, to be honest. She promises that since it's a battle to save others, she will grant them victory as their goddess. She walks toward them with an air of absolute authority, despite being so small. Dada and Zero just watch her, speechless. She stops right in front of them, looking up at Zyro with a very serious expression. She tells him that once the enemies are defeated, he has to shower her with praise while rubbing her head. Wait, what? Zyro's face is just total disbelief. He was expecting something much more epic than head pats. He remembers that goddesses all have their own bizarre personalities and forms, but there's one thing they all have in common. They're all proud warriors with a massive desire for approval. They're basically super-powered attention seekers. Zyro knows this all too well because he actually operated a goddess in his past. That was his big crime, guys. He looks down, his face full of regret. He never wanted to do this again. Dada is just standing there looking confused while the goddess waits for an answer. Zyro sighs and tells Dada they're basically finished. He knows they can't turn back now. He's convinced she's a real goddess. He can see the power in her eyes. He figures out she's the 13th goddess, one that was never even supposed to be activated. That can't be good. She asks him, "Now, my knight, what is our strategy to win the battle?" She's all business now. Zyro tells her those monsters aren't even worth her using her powers on. He's got his own plan. Suddenly, a loud scream rips through the forest. Zyro looks sharp, ready to jump into action. He gets that intense look in his eye. He's already scanned the area and knows where the threat is coming from. He tells Dada to back him up as he dashes off into the trees. He's not wasting a single second. He says, "Damn right I am," looking like he's actually enjoying the chance to fight again. He reaches for his knives, explaining that as a criminal hero, he was left with sacred seals of heat and might to fight with. Dada starts shouting out coordinates like a radar, telling Zyro exactly where to strike. Zyro grips his knife tight, focusing all his energy into the blade. You can see it starting to glow. The blade begins to hum with power as it channels the heat from his seals. He essentially turns his own weapons into live explosives. He's looking pretty enraged, honestly. He hurls the knives toward the approaching swarm of monsters with incredible force. The blades slice through the air, heading straight for the center of the monster group. A massive explosion erupts right in the middle of the frog monsters. There's smoke and fire everywhere. The monsters are sent flying through the air, completely caught in the blast. It's a total mess down there. A blinding flash of light covers the whole area as the energy dissipates. That had to hurt. Dada cheers, shouting, "You did it." He is so relieved he doesn't have to fight them himself yet. The Holy Knights are gasping for air, looking completely stunned by the sudden turn of events. But then, one of the monsters starts to twitch. It's not dead yet. Dada screams as he sees a whole new wave of monsters heading right for them. There are so many of them. Zyro tells him to start firing and shoot while he's running. He's already back on the move. Dada lets out a little eek as he fumbles with his weapon, terrified of the swarm. Zyro is a total blur of motion, slicing through the monsters with his blades as he dashes past them. He is tearing them apart. The monsters can't even touch him. He is a one-man wrecking crew. The knights just watch in awe as the monsters are blasted back by the sheer force of his attacks. They can't believe two random guys are doing all this while they were getting crushed. Smoke is still rising from the clearing as the last of the monsters go down. The area is completely trashed. Zyro is panting hard, covered in sweat. He asks if that's finally all of them. The knights are whispering among themselves, calling it unreal that they survived. One of the knights starts to thank him, but then stops and asks, "Who are—" Zyro looks over his shoulder, his eyes narrowing. He knows what's coming next. The knight gasps as he sees the mark on Zyro. He shouts, "You're penal heroes? Like they're the plague or something." Zyro tells them they need to retreat immediately because reinforcements are coming. He's trying to save them. But the knights just tell them to leave them alone. Talk about ungrateful man. Zyro just stares at them, probably thinking about how much he hates this job. Dada tries to explain that they have to get them to retreat or they're the ones who get punished by the seals. The knights are even listening. They're distracted by Torta's golden hair and eyes. They realize she's a goddess. The knight shouts, "Is that the goddess?" He looks completely blown away. He stomps his foot and demands to know what they're doing with her. He looks like he's about to start a fight with them. Dada flinches back, totally overwhelmed by the knight's aggression. He begs them to give it a rest and stop arguing because they're all on the same side and more monsters are coming. Sorrel just gives a tired "yeah" as he wipes the sweat from his face. He knows they can't hold back the next wave with Dada's poor aim and the injured soldiers who can barely move. He's also worried that he's completely out of knives. They are in a real tight spot here. Terita looks at him and says, "I understand how you feel, my knight." She sounds way too calm for the situation. Zira looks at her, probably wondering what she's up to this time. She offers to handle the rest of the low-level, filthy fairies in the blink of an eye. She is so confident. Syro looks away, thinking about it. He knows using her power has its own set of problems. He says they can't do it because using her powers might just make their whole situation even worse. Terita just smiles at him and tells him to come to her. She looks way too innocent while saying there would be no going back. Zyra starts to tell her they have it under control, but then something interrupts him. Suddenly, their names are being shouted from somewhere. Dada and Zyro both look surprised. It's Commander Venitim Leopold through their communication mirror. He tells them they have a massive problem and need to listen carefully. Zyro looks completely annoyed. He already knows it's going to be something bad. He asks why the commander only ever calls them to drop bad news. He's so done with it. Venitim says it's even worse than he thinks. This might literally be the end for all of them. A massive boom goes off in the background, and Zyro asks if he sounds like he has time to talk. He's in the middle of a war zone. Venetum ignores him and says the Holy Knight's main forces have started to move. He looks all serious at his desk. Zyro assumes that means they're finally retreating like they were supposed to. He calls it perfect. But Venetum says no. They aren't retreating, they're heading straight for the Demon Lord phenomenon. What are they thinking? Zyro and Dada both have a total meltdown. They look like they've just been told the world is ending. Zyro asks him to repeat that. He can't believe the knights are actually charging into the fire. Venetum explains that the knights in the forest have reorganized and are lining up to face the demon army head-on. He just laughs and asks what they want to do now. He is such a troll, honestly. Zyro is absolutely fuming. He looks like he wants to jump through the mirror and punch the guy. He turns to the knights and asks if they just didn't get the orders, or if they're just plain ignoring them. One of the knights looks down, looking a bit sheepish. He says they got the orders, but then he gets all brave and says, Holy Knights value honor above everything, so they aren't going to run away. Zero just asks, are you stupid or something? He has zero time for their honor right now. He knows they're just going to get brutally slaughtered at this rate. He can't let them fight head-on if he wants to survive. He realizes that as long as it's his mission to help them withdraw, he can't just let them sit there and die. He has a plan. He looks at Terita and thinks about the fact that they have a literal secret weapon right there with them. He clenches his teeth, muttering, damn it all. He knows what he has to do, and he hates it. The knights are all slumped over, injured and exhausted. They're in no condition to fight anyone. Dada looks at Ryu with big, worried eyes, asking what they're going to do next. Zyra looks at the goddess with a grim, determined expression. He's making a choice. Dada is practically in tears now. He looks so vulnerable, poor kid. Tarita just stands there looking calm and collected, as if she already knows what Zyra was going to say. Zyra finally addresses her directly. He's ready to make a deal. She smiles at him and asks if he finally realized he needs her help after all. She's definitely enjoying this. Zyra looks real intense. He says, yeah, it's time to fight back. He's done being the victim. Dada and the knights are completely lost. They have no idea what he's planning to do. He tells Dada there's a change of plans. They're actually going to defeat the Demon Lord themselves. Bold move. Dada is absolutely flabbergasted. He looks like he's just seen a ghost. The knights start shouting that there are 5,000 monsters out there and he's clearly lost his mind. Terita just smiles confidently and says of course they'll win because they have her on their side. Arrogant much? Dada and the knights are just staring at her, probably thinking she's just as crazy as Zyro. She steps forward with a soft sound, her eyes glowing with power. She reaches out her hand and says it's time for him to make an offering for their pact. This is getting real serious. Yuro looks at her hand, knowing exactly what this ritual entails. He's hesitant for a second. He thinks about the roles they're about to play, the goddess and her knight. He knows he has to offer a part of himself to make it work. He clenches his fist, getting ready. She looks at him with those deep, ancient eyes and asks if he vows to be her greatest knight. Jiro looks her right in the eye and simply says, "I do." It's a moment of absolute commitment. She beams at him, looking genuinely happy. She says it will be her pleasure to work with him. She leans in close to him, her hair fluttering around them like a halo. A bright light starts to shine as they seal the pact. It's like a massive energy surge is happening right between them. Zero closes his eyes, feeling the power of the goddess flowing into him. It's a lot to take in. His heart lets out a massive bay dump as the energy binds them together. He can feel the connection now. The massive ancient doors of the temple start to creak open, letting out a blinding light. It's like a divine gateway. The doors slam open with a huge crash and the light becomes almost unbearable. Something incredible is happening. Zero is staring right into the light, his eyes wide as he sees the power unfolding before him. Torita is floating in the center of the light, her hair glowing brilliantly. She looks like a true goddess of war now. Zero thinks about the pact. He knows the only way it ever ends is when one of them dies. He's tied to her forever now. He feels like this is the beginning of the end. He's once again thrown his life away for a cause he's not even sure about. The light fades, and they're back in the clearing. The knights are all staring at them in complete silence. Terida is glowing with a soft light as she looks up at Zyro. They're sharing a very intense moment. He whispers her name, Tawerida, like he can't quite believe she's real. She smiles at him and confirms it. "Yes, my knight, Zyro." She sounds so proud, it's almost cute. She looks up at a massive, intricate pattern that's appeared behind her. She explains that goddesses were always weapons. They've been descending upon the world for thousands of years. Whenever a demon lord threat appeared, they always returned to their coffins afterward. Each goddess had different properties. Some could summon storms, others could see the future. They were all unique and terrifying. But he realizes this goddess is special. She has a different kind of power than anything he's seen before. He stares into her eyes, seeing a galaxy of power hidden there. It's both beautiful and scary as hell. Zero looks at her, feeling the weight of his new responsibility. He's her knight now, and he has to act like it. And here is her true power. She is the goddess of swords. Look at all those blades sprouting from the ground. She can summon countless swords made of steel, from simple blades to famous ancient weapons. She's got demon swords and holy swords all at her command. It's a literal field of death. They're all just waiting in the depths of the void to be summoned by her. That is some serious firepower, guys. Cyro shares his battle strategy with her through their mental link. It's a sensation he hasn't felt in a long time, and it brings back a lot of memories. He looks at her and says her name, ready to put their plan into motion. She is his ultimate trump card. He flashes a small grin, realizing that just knowing she's got his back is more than enough for him to win. The knights are all in a commotion, shouting and asking what on earth he just did. They're completely baffled. They can't believe he actually forged a pact with a goddess. They look at him like he's a total freak. Zyra just snaps at them to shut up. He didn't have a choice if they all wanted to survive. Suddenly, a knight points into the woods and screams that the next wave is already here. The fraud monsters are back for round 2. Zira looks toward Tirita and simply says her name. "It's showtime, baby." Tirita's eyes go wide, sparkling with the thrill of the upcoming battle. She is so ready for this. The knights behind her are still arguing and shouting, completely oblivious to the power about to be unleashed. She reaches her hand out, saying she likes the sound of that. She's about to grant him her official blessing. The energy suddenly flares up, making a sharp sound as it crackles through the clearing. Massive bolts of light magic shoot out from her, lighting up the entire forest like a lightning storm. The holy knights are completely losing their minds, shouting in confusion as the light blinds them. One of them points up, his face full of shock as he realizes something is coming down from the sky. There's a series of sharp glints in the air as the goddess's power begins to manifest for real. And then, it's a literal rain of swords. Hundreds of blades are falling from the sky like metal rain. One of the giant frog monsters gets pinned straight through the back. It's making a disgusting squelching sound. The monsters are getting skewered left and right. It's total carnage as Tiorida unleashes a storm of steel on them. She stands there with her back to us, surrounded by falling blades. It looks incredibly epic, honestly. Dada is watching from the sidelines, completely blown away. He asks if all goddesses are this ridiculously powerful. Zero doesn't waste any time. He dashes forward into the field of swords at high speed. He reaches out and grabs the handle of a massive blade stuck in the ground. He's going in! He yanks it out with a single smooth motion and shouts that there's no time to rest. They have to keep the pressure on. He lets out a roar, telling them to annihilate every last one of those monsters. Zyro slices right through a monster with a powerful swing. He's moving so fast that I can barely follow him. He lands another hit, sending a monster crashing into the dirt with a heavy thud. He's a total beast. He shouts at Dada to keep him covered while he's tearing through the front lines. Dada pulls out a projectile and prepares to fire, trying to stay focused despite the chaos. He lets it loose, and it zaps right into a monster, knocking it back. Good job, Dada. Another monster is sent flying by the energy blast. They're actually winning this, man. Zyro is wielding that summoned blade like a pro. He is absolutely shredding anything that gets in his way. One monster has its eyes wide in terror just before he delivers a final blow. Talk about an intimidating look. The rest of the monsters are leaping away, trying to escape the absolute whirlwind of destruction he's causing. Steam is rising from the remains of the monster army. The Holy Knights are just standing there, completely speechless. Zyro lands back on the ground, his cape fluttering behind him. He's finished the jog for now. He teases Dada about having the worst aim he's ever seen. Even in the middle of a war, he's got to get a dig in. Dada is sitting on the ground, gasping for breath. He can't believe they actually pulled it off. Zyro looks at the field of swords, thinking about their next move. He knows they aren't out of the woods yet. Suddenly, Tarda pops up and asks, "How was that, my knight?" She's fishing for compliments, guys. She asks if he was touched by the greatness of her blessing. She's literally glowing with pride. Zyro just stares at her, his face a total mask of indifference. He's not making this easy for her. She gets all dramatic, giving him permission to praise and worship her to his heart's content. She's hilarious. Zyro just gives a really half-hearted, sure. He is so not into this worship thing. She just stares at him expectantly, her eyes fixed on his. She's not letting him off the hook. She says it again. "I have given you permission. Go ahead." She is so demanding for a little goddess. She closes her eyes and smiles, waiting for him to rub her head and sing her praises. She's basically a cat, honestly. The knights and Dada are all just staring at this bizarre interaction, looking completely confused. Zyro knows exactly what she's doing. He remembers the history of these goddesses and how they were treated. He finally reaches out and gives her the head pat she wanted. She looks so happy about it, too. He thinks about how goddesses valued nothing more than being praised by humans. It's like they couldn't even survive without it. And humans knew that, so they gave them what they wanted just so they could keep using them as weapons. Pretty messed up. He looks down, his face full of disgust. He hates being part of this system. He says the whole thing made him feel sick. Treating a powerful weapon like a pet is just plain wrong in his eyes. Tirda is still leaning into it, telling him to hurry up and do more. She has no idea how he's feeling. Suddenly, they hear their names being shouted from the mirror again. Zyro looks totally annoyed by the interruption. It's Venetum again. He's shouting, "You're still alive," like he can't believe his own luck. Dada screams at him to get over to the front line and help them fight. He is so done with Venetum's cowardice. Venetum just brushes it off, saying they can discuss that later. He is such a piece of work, man. He asks what they plan to do next, pointing out that if they don't hurry, all the knights in the forest are going to die. Dada is yelling that they're getting out of here. He just wants to survive the day. Venetum warns them that if more than half the knights die, they'll be executed too. He even suggests they might get burned at the stake. Scary stuff. Dada lets out a huge eek. His face is just pure terror right now. He's literally trembling, asking Zyro what they're supposed to do now. He's completely panicked. Tarda gets all fierce, telling him to wipe that pathetic expression off his face. She is way tougher than she looks. Zyro turns back to the mirror, asking Venetum if he can negate some part of their deal. He knows Venetum is only out for himself. Zyro shouts at him not to lie, because he knows Venetum would never help them out of the goodness of his heart. Venetum just tells him to wait a bit. See, Venetum bore the title of Commander, and he looks every bit the part with his fancy hair and earrings. He was a shrewd guy who could analyze a battlefield like a pro. He knew exactly how to handle the criminal hero units, but in reality, he was nothing more than a master con artist. He just knew how to talk his way into power. He once almost sold a royal castle to a circus before he got caught. That is the next level scamming, honestly. He only wanted to maintain his position as commander. None of the heroes actually liked or trusted him with their lives. Zyro figures that Venetum probably thinks they're all going to be slaughtered anyway. He knows the commander expects them to just hang themselves rather than try to save the knights. It's a pretty grim outlook. He looks off into the distance, his eyes full of determination. He is not going to do what Venetum expects. Dada is still crying, looking up at Zyro like he's his only hope in the world. The knights are all slumped on the ground, totally defeated. They look like they've given up all hope. Tirida is watching them with a gentle expression. She really does care about them in her own way. Zyro closes his eyes and smiles. He's realized there's no way he can just walk away from this. He asks for an update on the other knight's location. He's ready to get back to work. He turns to the knights and asks them what they plan to do now that the immediate threat is gone. They say they have to meet up with the main unit and fight by their captain's side. They're still full of that honor stuff. Zyro tells them to just get out of here, because they'll only get in his way. He's going to give their captain a piece of his mind. The knights just stare at him, looking completely bewildered by his attitude. One of them asks if he's really going to help them withdraw. He can't believe it. Lyro just looks away, saying he has to do it since he made that pact with the goddess. Dada is confused, asking if he actually plans on fighting the demon lord for real. He looks horrified. Zyro confirms they're continuing the mission as planned. He is not backing down. Dada just looks at him in complete shock. He can't believe Zyro is being so serious right now. Zyro just gives him a quiet and tense look over his shoulder. He's already made up his mind. Dada is staring at him with wide eyes, probably thinking Zyro is officially crazy. He explains they have to reach the knights before they get totally crushed and start a chaotic retreat. He's already got the whole thing mapped out. Tarita is absolutely beaming with joy. She is so excited to have a knight who's actually willing to fight. She says it's exactly what she expected from him. She's looking at him with so much admiration now. Dada is still hesitant, asking if he's really sure he wants to go through with this. He is still worried about his own skin, man. He reminds Ero that the Holy Knights were the ones who treated them like garbage. Why should they risk their lives for them? Sryro looks away, his face in shadow. He knows Dada has a point, but he can't let it go. He says it doesn't matter what they did or who they are. He's got his own reasons for fighting. He admits it would just piss him off if people started talking trash about him running away from the knights. He's too proud for that. Dada is completely dumbfounded. He asks, who cares if people talk behind your back? He just wants to stay alive. Zyro admits he's the one who cares. He says he doesn't have the patience for that kind of talk. He's got some serious ego issues, guys. He says it's nothing more than a bad habit of his. He hated being looked down on in the past. He knows this personality flaw is probably going to bite him in the end, but he's doing it anyway. He's got that cool, confident grin on his face. Suddenly, he reaches out and gives Dada a big, firm pat on the shoulder. Dada looks completely caught off guard by it. He says, "Let's go," with a massive, toothy grin. He is officially ready to take on the world. They all head off into the darkness of the forest together. They have to save those knights or it's game over for everyone. Talk about a cliffhanger. So we open up with this wide shot of the forest, and you can tell something intense is about to happen because the trees are just whipping by. Then, a heavy boot slams down into the dirt, showing someone is moving at a serious clip. We get a close-up of Dada, and man, he is sweating buckets. He looks like he's seen a ghost or something even worse. And then Dada shouts out that they're too late. Zyro and Tirita are right behind him, and they all look pretty stunned by what's ahead. So they finally reach the fortress, but it's a total graveyard. There are bodies everywhere in the snow, and you can see the carnage is just fresh. Zero looks down at the layout of the fort, trying to wrap his head around how a place this well guarded got wiped out. His eye lands on a tattered flag fluttering in the wind. It's got a family crest on Ito's set of scales. And then we get this flashback or explanation showing how the Holy Knights are split into factions, each one hoisting a different crest for their noble backers. Zyro realizes something isn't right. He knows all 12 bands of knights, but he's never seen this scale symbol before. It has to be a secret 13th unit. So, it turns out Tairita is the 13th goddess, matching this mysterious new unit perfectly. Lyra looks really grim here. He's putting the pieces together and it's not looking good for them. He points out that the goddess Dada tried to steal must have belonged to this specific unit. That's a huge connection. Teorita is just totally offended by the idea. She's shouting at him, asking if he has any pride at all. Dada just shrugs it off. He's like, I'd rather share food or money than pride. He's got his priorities straight, I guess. Terida is absolutely appalled. She's losing her mind over how unchivalrous he is. She starts lecturing Zyro, asking what he's been teaching his squire, but Zyro just ignores the drama and says Dada isn't even his squire. Zyro cuts through the noise. He's all business now, telling them they need to talk strategy right this second. He explains that while most monsters are just brainless, the demon lords are smart and use actual tactics to win wars. And then he starts thinking like a villain. He says if he were on the demon lord's side, he'd know exactly how to crush this defense. So, he maps it out. If the main force is held at the river, the smart move is to send detached units upstream to flank the fort and avoid a bloodbath. He tells them they have to hurry and meet up with the Holy Knights, because he's sure the monsters have already sent a flanking unit around. Zero turns around to give Dada a specific job, but he stops mid-sentence. And then, Dada is just gone. He left a weird little outline where he used to be standing. Teorita is just as confused as Isaro. Zero's eye twitches. He can't believe this kid just vanished in the middle of a war zone. He asks Tawadita where Dada went, and she points to a little scrap of paper on the ground. Zyro looks down at the note, probably expecting some profound plan, but knowing Dada, it's definitely not that. The note literally says, "Let's split up. You do your thing while I go steal everything of value from the Holy Knights." What a total klepto. Zyro is fuming. He's calling him an asshole for running off to loot while people are literally dying nearby. But then he just crumples the note into a ball. He decides Dada is barely useful anyway and turns back to Toita. Zyro looks Teorita right in the eyes and tells her, "I need your help again." He's actually being serious for once. Teorita gets that sparkly, excited look. She's all about being needed. She says, "But of course." She starts acting all high and mighty again, telling him he should start thanking her since she's the only one he can count on. Zyro just stays quiet for a second, letting her have her moment while he prepares for what's next. Then he gets a really sharp look and asks her if she's absolutely sure she can handle what he's about to ask. Terida takes it as a challenge. She's insulted that he'd even question her power. So she admits that goddesses get tired and she summoned a ton of swords earlier, so her energy levels are probably pretty low right now. But then she strikes a pose and declares that she is a goddess, and she will grant him anything he seeks. We see a close-up of Y-Zero's face, still bloody from the last fight, looking very intensely at her. He asks her a heavy question. Is she willing to give everything to him, even if it means fighting until her very last breath? Terida doesn't even hesitate. She gives him this soft, determined smile and says that serving humanity is her sole purpose. Zyro just gives a small, satisfied smirk. He's got the answer he needed. And then he shouts at her. He's like, "Listen, Terita, I'm not gonna let you do that." Terita is completely stunned. Her eyes are wide and she's just blankly staring at him. She starts yelling back, saying it's her duty to fight and even die for mankind. She's really emotional about it. Zyro just stares her down while she's mid-rant, not budging an inch. So suddenly a huge vibration shakes the ground, cutting their argument short. They both snap their heads toward the sound, looking completely alert. Over at the stockade, the wooden barricades are being smashed to splinters by something massive on the other side. The Holy Knights are backing away, terrified as smoke and dust rise from the broken wall. A giant shadow looms over the defenders, and they look like ants compared to whatever just broke through. And then a swarm of giant frog-like monsters starts leaping over the wreckage, tongues flailing and teeth bared. Zero sees the bridge is about to be overrun and tells Terida he needs her swords right now to stop them from crossing. Terida is still grumbling, wanting to finish their argument, but she knows there isn't time. So she waves her hand, and several magical blades materialize in the air, humming with power. More swords burst out of the ground near the monsters, catching them by surprise as they try to advance. Terita raises her arm, looking like a true goddess, and says the rest of their talk can wait until they win. Zyro looks at one of the magical blades hovering right in front of him, ready to grab it. He digs his foot into the ground, preparing for a high-speed launch towards the enemy. So Zero takes off. He's flying through the air, surrounded by a cloud of Tiarita's swords as they all rush toward the monsters. We see a seal glowing on his leg. It's the seal of flight, Sakara. It lets him jump so high it's basically flying, ignoring physics for a moment. The air is filled with the whistling sound of all those blades moving at insane speeds alongside him. Zyro reaches out and snatches one of the swords right out of the air without even looking. He clenches the hilt tight as he closes the distance on a massive frog demon that's trying to leap at the knights. And then, boom! He slams into the target with an explosion of force, clearing a path through the monster wave. Jiro shouts out Tyorita's name, signaling her for the next part of the combo. She's totally in sync with him, shouting back that she's on it while focusing her magic. So, the swords rain down like a storm, piercing right through multiple monsters at once and pinning them to the ground. The remaining frog monsters are freaking out, scrambling, and dashing away from the magical onslaught. More blades find their marks, digging deep into the thick hides of the giant beasts. The bridge is finally clear, with huge smoke clouds rising where Gyro's attacks landed. The knights can't believe their eyes. Up on the wall, the knights are manning a massive cannon. But they've stopped firing because they're so confused by what they're seeing. One of the older soldiers is sweating, just staring out into the dust and wondering who the hell just saved them. And then we see Cyro and Tyorita standing there in the middle of the debris, looking like total badasses while swords hover around them. The knights are whispering, wondering if these two are actually on their side or if they're a new threat. Suddenly, a figure in high-ranking armor appears on the battlements, looking down at our heroes. A sword tip digs into the stone of the wall as the new arrival makes their presence known. Zero looks up at them and taunts them, asking if that's all they've got. He's really pushing their buttons. Behind him, the smoke is clearing from the bodies of the demons they just slaughtered. It's a pretty gruesome sight. Tyorita tells Zero he looks filthy from all the blood and dust. He just sighs and says he might have gotten a little carried away. Then they hear footsteps. Someone is walking toward them from the fortress gates. A woman on a white horse rides out. She introduces herself as Pataush Kibia, the captain of the 13th Order of Holy Knights. She looks incredibly stern under her visor, shouting at them to identify themselves and what order they serve. Zyro just keeps it cool. He figures out she's the one in charge of the whole fortress. He tells her flat out that they need to work together to survive what's coming. Kibia's eyes go wide when she sees Tyorita. She stammers, asking if that's actually their goddess standing next to Zyro. She starts yelling, completely confused. She can't understand why the goddess has already awakened and why she's with a guy like Zyro. Zyro just looks at her with this bored expression. He knows it's hard for her to process. He tells her there's no time for a history lesson because the demon lord is almost there. Kivia is just left stuttering. And then he says the magic words that always cause trouble. I'm a hero. Kivia looks like she just got hit by lightning. Her jaw is practically on the floor. Zyro adds even more fuel to the fire, telling her he's on his way to kill the demon lord himself. We get a close-up of Kivia's face, and man, she is sweating and shaking with rage now. Jiro tells her that since it's his job, she and her men better help him if they don't feel like dying today. Kivia looks like she's about to blow a gasket. Her face is shadowed and her eyes are bugging out. She whispers, "Excuse me?" while her whole body starts trembling from the insult. And then she just explodes. She shouts that they are holy knights, and they don't take orders from heroes, and they'll guard this place with their lives. Tyorita steps forward and tells Kivia to hold her tongue, calling her a fool right to her face. Kivia looks completely shocked that the goddess is talking to her like that. Tyorita makes it clear she will only say it once. Nobody's allowed to question her knight's orders. Kivia's brain just stops. She repeats "your knight" like it's the craziest thing she's ever heard. She starts screeching at Zyro, calling him a monster and a lowly hero for forging a pact with the goddess. She tells Tyorita it must be a mistake, and that Tyorita was supposed to become her goddess instead. Talk about jealousy. Tyorita shut her down fast. She says goddesses don't make mistakes, and that choosing Zero was destiny. That's gotta sting. Zero tries to play peacemaker, telling Kivia he only did it so they could all get out of this alive. He actually sounds almost sorry. But Kivia isn't having any of it. She screams "silent scum" at him from behind her visor. Tyorita thinks Kivia needs a demonstration of her power to understand who's really in charge around here. Wait, Kivia noticed something. She looks toward the side as her eyes go wide with fresh terror. Doro turns to Tyorita and asks if he does this, she'll shower him with praise. He's totally playing into her need for ego boosting. Chivia is just frozen, whispering his name like it's a curse. We see Zyro's eyes go sharp. Something is coming and he feels it before anyone else. Kivia points her sword right at Zyro, her hand shaking as she challenges him. There's a small metallic sound as something small hits the ground. The tension is crazy right now. Kivia calls Zero Forbarts the most despicable hero of them all and demands to know what he's plotting. She literally calls him a goddess-murdering criminal scumbag. Wow, Kivia really hates this guy. A weird hissing sound fills the air, and we see a title card for Chapter 4 as the scene shifts slightly. The Holy Knights are standing their ground, weapons out, facing off against Yarrow and Tiorita in the fortress courtyard. Kia is still demanding to know what Zyro's plan is while her soldiers look on, totally nervous. We get a close-up of Kivia's face, dripping with sweat. She's really at her breaking point with this hero. So, we see Rajaro standing there, sword in hand, looking like a total boss, despite Kivia calling him a criminal scumbag again. The wind starts hissing through the trees and snow begins to fall even harder. The atmosphere is getting heavy. Terida looks up, sensing something strange in the air. She's definitely on high alert. And then this horrible screeching sound starts echoing through the area, making everyone wince. The knights are all covering their ears, crying out about that metallic scraping sound that's just painful to hear. Zyro grits his teeth. He knows exactly what that sound means. It's here, he says. So everyone looks toward the horizon, and there's this massive, blinding light erupting from the mountains. A huge, heavy foot with giant claws stomps down, shaking the entire earth as it lands. Suddenly, a whole pack of monstrous demons bursts out of the woods, led by these hairy, ape-like giants. The knights are freaking out, yelling about giant fairies while looking through their binoculars at the approaching army. Kivia grabs a pair of binoculars and screams that the threat is coming from behind them too. They're surrounded. The screeching sound is coming from all the mountain peaks now. It's like a coordinated attack from every direction. We see a quiet shot of some reeds and plants, but the peace doesn't last long. A massive dark shape crushes the plants into the mud as the invasion moves forward. Zyro looks really focused. He's staring at the main threat, realizing things just got a lot more complicated. And then it appears. Goggie, Demon Lord Phenomenon number 47. It looks like a giant armored insect from nightmares. So we get a quick history lesson about how mankind has been fighting these Demon Lord phenomena since ancient times. This current conflict is known as the Fourth Conquest of Demon Lords. It's basically a recurring apocalypse. The first one to show up 20 years ago was called the Serpent, a massive armored snake that destroyed everything in its path. Monsters started attacking settlements, and even regular animals and insects started turning into freakish demons. The land was literally dying. People didn't believe the rumors at first because it had been 400 years since the last conquest. They thought it was just tall tales from the countryside. By the time everyone realized it was real, the demon lords had already spread through all the lands. It was a total disaster. And that's how mankind lost half its habitat. We see a shot of the world, and half of it is just dark and ruined. Back to the present, Goggie is screeching again, its many legs clicking on the rocks. The knights are absolutely petrified. They're shaking and whispering that it's an actual demon lord right in front of them. We get a close-up of the monster's face. It's got these creepy, glowing eyes that just stare right into your soul. The other demons seem to be waiting for a signal, gathering around the giant insect lord. So Kivia realizes that the insect is using its screeches to give actual orders to the entire army of fairies. It's like a general. She warns her men to be extremely careful. She can tell this isn't a normal fight. Zyro explains that every demon lord has a unique power, and Goggie is no exception. One of the knights loses his cool and fires a cannon right at the monster. Boom! Zero's eyes go wide. He's yelling for them to stop, but it's too late. The projectile is already flying. Kivia shouts at her men to hold their fire and not aim for the demon lord directly. So the cannonball zooms toward Goggie, cutting through the air like a streak of lightning. There's a bright flash as the cannonball just bounces right off the monster's armor. It didn't even leave a scratch. The knight is in total disbelief. He can't believe the beast just deflected a direct hit from a cannon. And then, it gets worse. The deflected shot flies back and slams into the fortress itself. Another massive explosion rocks the walls. The knights on the bridge are shouting in panic as they watch their own fortress get hit. It's a total disaster. Zyro's yelling at them to listen. He explains that the monster can strategically deflect seal-based attacks right back at them. Their regular weapons are useless. The soldiers are completely lost now. They're asking what they're even supposed to do if they can't use their best gear. Zyro tells them they need something huge to physically attack it, but they'll never get a battering ram close enough. The knights are despairing, asking if there's truly nothing they can do to win. Zyro just looks down with a grim expression and says, yeah, he's being brutally honest. He looks at the monster again. Goggie is basically a moving fortress with armor that's practically indestructible. He turns to Kivia and says it's no surprise they were pushed back this far, and he knows it must have cost her a lot of men already. Zyro tells them to do themselves a favor and retreat while they still have the chance. He's trying to save them in his own way. Kivia just stands there, silent, with her head down. You can feel her pride being crushed. And then we see her armored fist clenching so hard it's vibrating. She's not going to take this lying down. So she turns around and shouts at her men to prepare the scorched terrain seal while the monster is still across the river. The soldiers start chattering nervously. They clearly know how dangerous that seal is. Zyro and Tiareta look completely shocked by her decision. They know it's a desperate move. One of the knights asks if she's sure because that seal would blow the entire forest to bits and probably kill them too. Zyro shouts at her to stop. He points out that scorched terrain seals are still magical seals, and they'll all be dead if it fails. He adds that the soldiers carrying it wouldn't even survive the blast. It's basically a suicide mission. Kivia keeps her back to him, looking out at the battlefield. She's dead set on her course. She asks if he thinks she didn't consider that. She declares she won't allow the enemy to take a single step onto this land, no matter the cost. Zyro looks at her with total shock. He can't believe her blind devotion to duty over life. We see a close-up of Kivia's eye through her visor. She is glaring with an intensity that's almost scary. Zyro is just stunned into silence for a moment, processing how reckless these knights are. He looks at all the soldiers behind her, realizing they're all willing to die for some noble backer's allegiance. It's senseless to him. He grits his teeth, looking absolutely disgusted by the whole situation. He thinks to himself that there are way too many people in this world who are willing to throw their lives away for absolutely nothing. So Zyro suddenly takes command. He shouts Kivia's name and tells her to use her troops to back him up instead. Kivia and the soldiers are all like, what? They're completely thrown off by his confidence. Zyro has his back to them, looking at the approaching swarm. He tells them to distract the demon lord by targeting the smaller fairies. The knights are all whispering and confused, not knowing if they should actually follow this criminal hero's plan. Kivia screams at him again, asking why she, a commander, should take orders from a penal hero like him. Zyro turns his head slightly, his expression fierce. He says he's doing it to survive, that's his only reason. Kivia is just left gaping at him. She's never met someone so blunt about their motivations. Zyro looks at Tiareta and tells the knights he doesn't plan on dying today, and he's not interested in seeing them get slaughtered either. Tiareta looks up at him with these big, shining eyes. She's really seeing him in a new light now. So Zyro turns away and says he's gonna go kill the demon lord. He sounds so casually confident about it. He tells Kivia that if he makes it back alive, she can complain all she wants and he'll take any punishment she gives him. He even says he'll compliment her as much as she wants. Kivia just looks completely bewildered. She has no idea how to react to a guy this strange. Tiareta is looking up at the sky, her hair blowing in the wind, looking very goddess-like for a moment. Then Zyro suddenly grabs Tiareta around the waist, catching her by surprise. And then he shouts, "Let's do this," and jumps straight up into the air with Tiareta in his arms while the knights watch from below. They're soaring through the trees, a real power couple moment. Tiar tops him if he's really going to shower her with praise when they get back. She's grinning ear to ear, reminding him that there are no take-backs. She's so excited for the attention. Zyro doesn't say anything, but we see his face from the side. He's totally focused on the fight ahead. Tiareta looks at him and sees that he's not just doing this for fun. He's dead serious about winning. Zyro asks her if she's angry, probably because of how he's handling things so bluntly. Down below, a knight's brute stomps down into the cracked earth. The army is moving. Zyro thinks about the Holy Knights and says it pisses him off how they live. We see a close-up of Kivia looking determined. Zyro thinks they're just spewing absolute nonsense about sacrifice. And then he says they do it all for honor or something pointless like that. He really has no respect for their traditional knightly ways. Zero is leaping across the clouds, carrying Torita as they head straight for the Demon Lord's position. He thinks they're all being stupid. Teir'd's hair is whipping around, and she looks a bit startled as Zyro calls out her name. He grits his teeth and tells her that what those people consider important is actually completely meaningless. The trees are rushing by in a blur as they speed through the forest. Zyro says, "It isn't honor or loyalty that's going to win this war." He gives this big, confident grin and declares that the only thing that's going to defeat the Demon Lord is him. So we shift to Spyro's perspective. He can feel the cold air and the wind brushing against his body as they fly. He looks down and sees hordes of demons roaming the forest below like a sea of monsters. He thinks about how there's only one person on his side right now, the tiny goddess he's holding in his arms. He gives a small grin. Zyro looks down at Torita and tells her to bring it on and hold on tight because he doesn't want her falling. We get a close-up of Torita's eyes, and they are sparkling with admiration as she looks at him. She gives him a sweet smile and tells him not to worry about her. She's more worried about the humans. She reaches out her hand and tells him to allow her to fulfill her duty as a goddess. She warns him not to underestimate her, shouting that she can still fight. Zyro just gives her a side-eye, not letting his guard down for a second. And then sparks fly. Zyro is moving so fast he's practically leaving a trail of light behind him. He notices that Teir'd's hair and eyes flicker brighter the more he pushes himself. It's like their powers are reacting to each other. He tells her there's a limit to how much a goddess can summon, right? He's being strategic about her energy. He says it's a knight's duty to handle the strategy, and he wants her to save her strength for the perfect moment. Teir'da looks a bit sleepy but determined. She agrees and says, "Very well," as she trusts his plan. Suddenly, a flying demon dives at them, its claws outstretched and ready to strike. Zyro's eyes go wide as he realizes he needs a place to land soon. Mobile combat is all about positioning. He pulls out a throwing knife, his fingers nimble despite the speed they're moving at. So he lets it fly. The knife whistles through the air toward a flying demon wolf that's blocking their path. The blade sinks right into the monster's snout, and you can see the blood spray as it connects. The demon wolf lets out a yelp as it gets knocked back by the force of the throw. One down. Teir'da is impressed. She cheers for her knight, but Zyro just tells her not yet. He knows the big fight hasn't even started. He says another key point in a fight like this is to never stop moving, keeping the enemy guessing. Zyro is dashing between the demons, dodging and weaving like a pro while still carrying Teir'da. The ground monsters are shouting and snapping at them, but Zyro is too fast for them to catch. He keeps slipping into their blind spots, making them look totally clumsy as they try to swing at him. He takes out 2 more demons with quick strikes. His movements are just a blur of efficiency. Teir'da too asks if they're finally ready to go all out. She's itching to use her magic, but Zyro still says not yet. He's waiting for the exact right opening to strike the Lord. So he does this cool spin in midair, scanning the battlefield as he lands on a demon's head for a split second. He takes down another group of flying demons with more throwing knives, clearing the airspace around them. There's a series of explosions behind him as his attacks hit their marks. It's a total war zone now. Zero grits his teeth and tells Teir'da to keep moving. It's not over yet, not by a long shot. The demons are being blown apart, limbs and wings flying everywhere. Zyro is really tearing through them. He leaps over a massive explosion, using the blast to propel himself even further forward. He looks ahead with this incredibly fierce gaze and says, "We're almost there." He spots the demon lord just up ahead, looming over the trees like a mountain of armor and hate. Zyro takes a massive leap, soaring through the night sky with the moon behind him. It looks so epic. He's breathing hard, sweat and blood on his face, but his eyes are still locked on the target. Teir'da looks up at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. She's completely focused now, ready for the signal. Awad Goggie lets out another deafening screech, its many feelers waving in the air as it senses them coming. So we see the full scale of the monster compared to Wyro. It's absolutely massive. It's like a tiny man flying toward a mountain. We get a close-up of the creature's many, many eyes. They're all staring right at Zyro. This thing is definitely intelligent. And then we finish with Torita's face. She looks absolutely terrified now that she's this close to the demon lord. Man, this is going to be an insane fight. Man, check out those creepy eyes. The demon lord is staring right through them. So that massive armored bug is the actual demon lord? Zyro and Tierra look like ants compared to it. Terida is completely stunned. She can barely even say the words, Demon Lord. Zyro stays cool, though. He looks back at her and asks if she's doing okay. She looks a bit shaky, but you can see the determination in her eyes. And then she totally flips the script. She yells that she isn't afraid and that destroying demon lords is her job as a goddess. Zero tells her to hold her horses. He says they have to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Terra isn't having it. She screams back that she's already waited long enough. Suddenly, the monster lashes out with its massive, sharp legs. It's coming right for them. Zyro grinds his teeth and tells her to trust him for just a little bit longer. Those legs are moving fast, cutting through the air like giant scythes. Zyro grabs Teorta and leaps into the air just in time to avoid getting sliced in half. He's analyzing the situation midair, looking for a way in. He realizes the main shell is way too tough, so he needs to find a different target. There it is. He spots the joint where the leg connects to the body. That's the weak spot. So he whips out a knife and throws it with crazy precision. The blade hits the joint perfectly, causing a small explosion of dust and debris. The leg just snaps right off. Talk about a clean break. Zyro tells the monster not to be so dramatic, it's just one leg, right? But that strike confirmed his theory. He knows how to take this thing down now. The shell is indestructible, but if he keeps hitting those uncovered openings, he can win. But there's always a catch. He looks worried as he realizes the cost of this fight. Down in the woods, a whole bunch of other monsters are starting to show up. The demon lord's screeching is acting like a dinner bell for every beast in the area. Zyro is running low on knives, too. Terida notices the reinforcements coming and her eyes go wide. They're getting completely surrounded by giant hairy apes and insect monsters. A giant lizard with jagged teeth leaps up at them, snapping its jaws. Zyro doesn't even flinch. He just kicks the thing right back down into the dirt. The lizard hits the ground with a massive impact, but there are still so many left. Tiratil looks over at Zero, waiting for his command. She's yelling that they keep coming and that it's finally time for her to join the fray. Zyro plants his foot firmly on the ground, preparing for the final push. He looks at her and says, "It's time, Teolitaka." This is the moment they've been waiting for. The monsters are howling and snarling, closing in from all sides. The demon lord is bleeding from where Zero took its leg, making it even more dangerous. Zyro points toward the demon lord and tells her to clear him a path through the horde. And he tells her to make it a big one. He's actually got a little smirk on his face. Terida looks at him, realizing he's finally giving her the chance to show off her true power. She gets this really satisfied little smile. She's definitely ready for this. She declares that he should behold the power of a goddess. She's going all out. Beams of blinding white light start tearing down through the dark clouds above. The sky is filled with glowing streaks of energy falling like meteorites. Zyro looks up. Even he seems impressed by the scale of her magic. The whole forest is illuminated by the massive pillars of light descending around them. The light solidifies into hundreds of glowing swords raining down from the heavens. Terida is in full goddess mode, promising that the path shall be cleared for her knight. The swords slam into the monsters below, pinning them to the ground and wiping out the horde in seconds. She looks back at Zyro with a proud grin and asks him how that was for an opening act. Zyro gives her a good job, but he's already moving on to the next step of the plan. He tells her he needs another summon, but this time he wants something a bit more special. Terida gets a little flustered and tells him not to mock her, but she's clearly happy with the praise. She starts channeling a new, more concentrated energy swirling in the air. The giant demon lord is still looming over the forest, watching its minions get destroyed. Terida looks at Zero with total confidence and tells him that all he needs to do is pray. A long streak of light begins to form in the air, glowing with intense power. She summons a massive, beautiful spear that crackles with divine energy. Zyro's eyes light up. This is exactly what he needed to finish the job. He reaches out and clenches his fist, ready to take hold of the divine weapon. The spear floats there, radiating an aura of absolute destruction. Zyro grabs the spear and activates his seal of flight, Sakara, launching himself and Teorda into the sky. They streak through the air like a comet, heading straight for the demon lord. Zyro drives the spear deep into the monster's injured joint. Blood sprays everywhere. The spear is burrowing into the creature's massive body, glowing brighter and brighter. The demon lord screeches in agony as the energy from the spear starts to overwhelm it. The monster's carapace starts to crack under the pressure of the divine strike. A massive explosion of light and force rocks the creature's entire body. Smoke and steam pour off the monster as it staggers back from the impact. Zero and Tiorta watch from the ground. Zero thinks he's finally done it. But then, something horrifying happens. The monster starts to sprout new limbs from its wounds. The energy from the spear is being absorbed, and the Demon Lord is literally regenerating itself. Zyro and Tiorta can't believe their eyes. This thing just won't die. Zero looks totally frustrated. He's calling it cheating. And honestly, I agree with him. The monster attacks with even more fury, swinging its new legs like giant hammers. Zyro grabs Tiorta's head to protect her as the monster closes in for the kill. He pulls her close, taking the brunt of the monster's counterattack to keep her safe. A massive spray of blood hits the ground. Zyro's been hit bad this time. He falls backward, his blood staining the snowy landscape as he collapses. He's thinking about how he's doing exactly what he told himself not to, risking his life for a goddess. The Demon Lord looms over them, looking like it's won the fight. The other monsters are getting confused, though. Without orders from the Demon Lord, they don't know what to do. They're panicking like little kids who lost their parents. It's absolute chaos in the woods. Tiorta looks down at Zyro, her voice trembling as she calls out his name. She's actually crying now. She looks totally heartbroken seeing him like this. Zyro is barely holding on, staring up at the snowy sky with his remaining strength. He notices Tiorta's eyes. They're shining so brightly, it's almost blinding to him. He's seeing something in her that he never expected to see in a goddess. And then, out of nowhere, Dada pops up. He's looking pretty confused by the whole scene. Zyro's eyes go wide. He definitely didn't expect the little thief to show up now. Zyro and Tiorta are just sitting there on the ground, staring up at Dada like he's a ghost. Zyro manages to choke out a question, asking Dada what the heck he's doing here. Check this out. Dada is lugging around this huge wooden barrel with some fancy carvings on it. The barrel has tags on it that say Verkal Corp and handle with care. This looks important. There's a big label on the front that says Scorched Terrain Seal. That sounds like a big bomb, bro. Zyro's eyes are practically popping out of his head as he realizes what Dada has in his hands. Zyro starts laughing like a crazy person. He realizes Dada actually stole a super weapon. He reaches out and grabs Dada by his cloak, still chuckling through the pain. He asks Dada if he really stole this too. He's almost impressed. Dada is totally panicking, trying to explain that it just happened to be right there when he was sneaking around. Zyro lets him go and gives him a thumbs up. Good job, he says. That's a rare compliment. He tells Dada he'll hold off on killing him for now since he brought exactly what they needed. So that's the end of Chapter 5. There's a little note from the author here thanking everyone for reading Volume 1. Now we've got some funny bonus comics. Euro asks Dada if he's ever stolen anything actually interesting. Dada flips the question back and asks if Zero has ever stolen anything himself. Dada mentions stealing a silver cup once, and Zyro just thinks that's totally normal and boring. Zyro says there are plenty of things he wouldn't want stolen from him, though. Dada tells a story about how he once stole from a guy who turned out to be a wanted criminal. He gets this really sparkly look in his eyes as he remembers the reward he got. It turns out he ran straight to a detective's house and got a huge bounty reward. Zyro is actually shocked. But then Dada gets that shifty look again, and Zyro yells at him to stop thinking about stealing more. Next gag comic is about plastic surgery. This sounds like it's gonna be weird. Zyro and Dada are freezing their butts off in the snow, shivering like crazy. The narration says that penal heroes who are executed are recovered and resurrected even if they die. Tiorta shows up and promises to lead Zyro to victory as his goddess. Zyro points out that if they get ground into meat, they won't be able to resurrect properly. Dada is terrified. Tiorta's hair is glowing with heat as she uses her divine power. Dada starts imagining the priests kneading his ground-up remains into a new body like dough. He realizes he's actually warm because of Tiorta's power and starts enjoying it, ignoring Zyro's warnings. He's hoping that if a miracle happens, he might even be resurrected as a tall, buff guy. Zyro just thinks he's a hopeless half-wit. Check out this awesome back cover art. Zero's daggers look seriously cool here. And here's the full cover for Volume 1. Zyro looks so fierce with all that blood on his face. Moving on to Volume 2. Dada is on the cover looking totally overwhelmed by a pile of treasure and holding a giant bag. Back to the story. We get a breakdown of the Scorched Terrain Seals. They're sacred seals powerful enough to turn everything into ash. The barrel itself is a weapon made from scraps of wood with seals carved into them. You can even control the blast size by removing planks. So the fact that Dada was just carrying it around like it was a normal barrel is actually insane. It pretty much proves that Dada is the biggest half-wit of all time. But hey, it might save their lives. Cyro is still sitting there, catching his breath, while Tiorita and Dada stand by. Dada is panicking, asking if he stole something he shouldn't have again. He's so used to getting in trouble. Cyro actually smiles and tells him that for a change he did a good job. Dada can't believe it. Cyro looks seriously drained, but you can see he's got a plan forming. The giant insect demon lord is still screeching and causing a ruckus in the middle of the field. Zyro tells them that with this, they can finally defeat the monster. Dada is still screaming his head off though. Those spindly monster legs are lashing out again, cutting through the trees. Cyro and Tiorta share a quick, intense look. They know this is their last shot. Zyro realizes he's too wounded to dodge much longer, so he has to end this fast. He yells at Dada to hop on. He's going to carry both of them into the fight. Zyro launches himself into the air carrying Dada, the barrel, and Tearata all at once. What a beast! He looks at Tearata and tells her she did good too, and that he appreciates her help. Tearata gets a competent look and tells him to leave the rest to her. She's back in the game. They land with a heavy thud right in front of the massive insectoid monster. Cyro is holding the barrel, looking directly at the demon lord. No more running away. He realizes he doesn't need to blow up the whole forest if he just aims for the wound he already made in the shell. He activates the seal of flight, Sakar, one more time, preparing to launch the ultimate projectile. So he hurls the explosive barrel right into the monster's shattered carapace. Dada and Tirata are screaming in terror as they realize how close they are to the blast. Cyro grinds his teeth and yells at them to hold on tight. It's about to get really hot. The barrel disappears into the monster's guts as it tries to shield itself. For a split second, there's a bright flash as the seal activates inside the creature's body. And then, kamoom! A massive pillar of fire and smoke erupts, consuming the demon lord. Bits of insect legs and scorched shell are flying everywhere as the monster is blown apart. From a distance, Captain Kivia and her holy knights see the massive mushroom cloud rising over the mountains. She stares at the explosion and whispers Zero's name. She knows exactly who caused that mess. Back at the blast site, Dada and Tiorita are just staring at the devastation. They really did it. Zyro gives them a satisfied smirk. The demon lord is finally gone for good. We move to the Purcell River crossing, where the snow is still falling over the quiet fort. Someone's boots hit the stone bridge with a weary step. It's Zero. He collapses onto his knees, letting out a big breath. He's completely exhausted. Teorita and Dada are right there with him, looking a bit worse for wear themselves. Dada is cheering, saying they actually completed the mission. He's just happy they aren't getting executed today. Jiro looks up at Dada, but his expression isn't exactly friendly yet. So Zyro just whacks Dada right in the face. He's still mad about Dada's reckless behavior. Dada falls back, making a funny noise as he hits the ground. Poor guy just can't win. Zyro tells him that's payback for running off on his own and stealing more stuff. He stands up and uses his binoculars to check the surrounding area. He sees the monsters are starting to kill each other now that the demon lord's core is destroyed. The problem is solving itself. Zero thinks to himself that it's ridiculous, but Dada was actually the one who led them to victory. He calls him his knight in his head. Teorita approaches Zyro, looking all cute and expectant under the starry sky. She starts bragging about how her divine grace blessed him and asks if he has any complaints. Zyro just gives her a little smile and says he's got no complaints at all. And then she does this adorable thing where she grabs her skirt and looks all shy. She takes a deep breath, looking like she's about to say something super important. She bows lightly and asks him if it's about time he started showering her with praise. Zyro looks at her and starts to realize something about goddesses. He goes quiet for a moment, just observing her genuine smile. He admits to himself that he used to hate this part of being with a goddess. They risk their lives for humans, and all they want in return is a bit of appreciation. It's so simple, yet heavy. Honestly, he's starting to see her differently now. He reaches out a bandaged hand. He pats her head gently and says, "Good job." He feels a bit guilty because it feels like manipulation, but he means it. Teorita has the biggest, happiest smile you've ever seen. She's absolutely glowing from the praise. But then she gets greedy and tells him to use more force and give her even better compliments. She really wants to feel the love. Jiro looks at her warmly and tells her, "You're alive. I'm proud of you." Man, that's actually really sweet. Tirta's eyes go wide. That compliment definitely hit her different than the others. She thinks it's a strange thing to say. She asks if he's really praising her just for staying alive. Zyro nods and says that alone is more than praiseworthy. He's being totally serious. Terita starts to say something else, her expression softening into something more thoughtful. She wonders to herself if it's really okay for a goddess like her to even exist. Zyro looks at her and asks what she means by okay. He knows something is bothering her. She looks down, suddenly looking very small and vulnerable as his hand rests on her head. Zero watches her carefully, sensing the hidden pain in her history. He tells her not to ask him. He thinks that's something she needs to decide for herself. She whispers, I see. Her mood has completely shifted now. She looks up with these really intense, emotional eyes. She's definitely going through it. Zyro is taken aback. He didn't expect her to react so strongly to his words. He wonders if she's thinking about her past and why she looks so upset all of a sudden. She closes her eyes tightly, clearly struggling with some dark memories. She clenches her hands into her skirt, trying to pull herself back together. But then, she snaps right back. She gets this huge grin and says that if she survived, it means she's even greater than she thought. Joro is totally shocked by how fast she changed her mood. It's like emotional whiplash. She tells him that since she's so great, she gives him permission to praise her even more. Zyro just sighs and gives in. He starts laughing softly at her antics. He starts laying it on thick, calling her amazing and saying he's humbled to even touch her head. Terida is loving every second of it. The moment is interrupted when Captain Kivia shows up, looking stern as ever and calling out Zero's full name. She glares at him and asks if all the destruction she saw was his doing. Zyro just looks at her and gives a simple, yup. He's not even trying to hide it. Kivia is fuming. She asks him if he expects her to just accept everything that's happened. Zyro looks away. He understands exactly why she's so angry with him. He realizes that under normal circumstances, Kivia was probably the one supposed to form a pact with Torata. Kivia accuses him of stealing the goddess and then stealing the Scorched Terrain seal to kill the demon lord without authority. Tirita is confused, wondering what Kivia means by saying Zyro stole her. Kivia screams at her that she was originally supposed to be... Well, she's too angry to even finish her sentence. Kivia says Tiorta was meant to be placed under the protection of the 13th Order of Holy Knights. Zyro, Dada, and Tirita all look back at the army of knights standing behind Kivia. Zyro gets this suspicious look on his face. He's starting to doubt Kivia's version of the story. He looks at Kivia and wonders if she's actually lying. He can tell it's hard for her to even say those words. He tells her to wait a second. He's got some serious questions about their protection. Tirita is confused too. She asks if goddesses aren't supposed to be used for fighting instead of just being protected. Zyro asks why they didn't use her then. If she's their most powerful weapon, why were they planning on fighting until they all died? He realizes these knights are hiding something huge from them. The vibe is getting really tense. Kivia looks disgusted. She can't stand being questioned by a penal hero like him. She points her finger and yells that Zyro unilaterally decided to forge a pact with her. She calls him criminal scum. Terida looks at Zyro and calmly says that if that's what happened, it must have been their destiny. Kivia is absolutely losing it. She screams at Terida, asking how she can be okay with that. Terida stays firm. She looks right at Zyro and says, but of course. She's not backing down. She declares that she believes in Zyro for Bart's. That's a huge statement given his status. She says he's a knight worthy of her blessing and the one who will defeat every last demon lord. Zero looks at her, genuinely surprised by the level of trust she's putting in him. But Kivia just looks down and says sadly that this man is completely unworthy of any trust. She looks him dead in the eye and calls him by his infamous title, the Goddess Killer. Oh, man, the secret is out. She reveals that he used to be a holy knight himself, until the day everything changed. The room goes quiet as she tells them that Zyro actually murdered the goddess he had a pact with. Zyro closes his eyes as the memories start flooding back. He looks like he's in pain. He thinks to himself that he can still vividly remember that exact moment. He remembers the feeling of the knife piercing through her heart. It's a dark, jagged memory. He recalls the powerful sparks of divine energy almost tearing his hand as he did it. And the most haunting part? He remembers the flames fading from her eyes as she took her very last breath. He thinks about how there's no way he could ever forget any of it. He's carrying a lot of guilt, man. The chapter ends with the final report. Penal Hero Unit 9004 defeated Goggie and helped the Holy Knights escape. Talk about a bittersweet victory. So we start with the metal blade of a shovel slamming into a pile of loose rocks and dirt. Someone's getting yelled at to pick up the pace and dig harder. And here's the guy doing the yelling. This mustachioed fella is acting all high and mighty, claiming that as their king, he might consider letting someone back into the Holy Knights if they do a good job. But check out Zyro's face. He's carrying a massive bundle of pickaxes and shovels on his back, looking completely exhausted and definitely not impressed by the royal lecture. Chapter 7 kicks off with Zero and Teorda in the tunnels. Zyro's still doing all the heavy lifting, while Teorda looks like she's just along for the ride, pickaxe in hand and a big smile on her face. Alright, time for a little history lesson. CB's patterns, they're sacred seals. The temple says they're wisdom given to humans by the gods. Basically, humans engrave these seals onto stuff and use their own will and life force to power them up using sunlight as the fuel. It looks pretty cool when that sword starts glowing. The effects are all over the place: heat, lightning, you name it. Naturally, because humans are humans, they mainly use this tech for making bigger and better ways to blow each other up in wars. But then a month ago, things got weird in the Zavangon tunnels. People realized they could dig up ore for the seals there, so they set up all these seal-powered machines to mine it. And then, the mine just stopped being a mine. It actually transformed into a ferry, which is basically like the land itself turning into a monster. Everyone had to ditch the place. It's super creepy. The paths changed on their own, and even lumps of dirt started moving. Every living thing in those tunnels turned into a ferry, too. It turned into a total nightmare loop. Anyone who stepped inside got attacked by the former humans, and if they died, they just became part of the fairy mine themselves. So that's where our guys come in. Penal Hero Unit 9004 got assigned the lucky job of clearing out the Demon Lord phenomenon and all those fairies. The first step? Carving a new route. The old tunnels were so twisted and messed up that the old maps were basically trash, so they had to make a shortcut. The worst part is that all the fancy mining gear was contaminated by the Demon Lord's power. Poor Zero is stuck digging manually with a pickaxe, and he is feeling every bit of that manual labor. And while he's struggling, someone is literally poking him in the head, telling him to put his back into it. Man, the disrespect. Meet Norgal Senridge, member of Penal Hero Unit 9004. He's the one screaming about the schedule. He's got that classic angry manager energy, doesn't he? Zyro just gives him the most deadpan yeah response. He even calls him Your Majesty, but you can tell he's just being sarcastic. Zyro explains that the reason he has to put up with this is because Nordal actually believes he is a king. Like, he's totally convinced. He genuinely believes it. He's glaring at Zyro, telling him to take the job seriously while he sits there doing paperwork. He's a real piece of work. Apparently, Norgal was a terrorist who tried to blow up a castle he claimed was stolen from him. Someone like that was never going to fit into normal society. But here's the kicker, and it's the most annoying part for everyone else involved. Norgal is actually a genius at tuning sacred seals. He's sitting there with his tools, working with extreme precision. It's the one thing he's actually good at besides shouting. Zyro thinks about how engraving seals is a lot like construction work in its own way. It requires a specific kind of focus. See, if you mess up even one tiny curve while you're engraving, the whole seal is ruined. It won't be precise, and the power output will be total garbage. Usually it takes a whole team of skilled artisans working together to get a weapon design right. It's supposed to be a collaborative effort. But Norgal, he can do the whole thing by himself. He blows on a finished seal, looking smug as he realizes he's perfected it. Anyway, after his little terrorist stunt caused a ton of casualties, they put him on trial, and that's how he ended up in the Penal Hero Unit. So the current setup is Norgal tunes the seals while Zyro does the literal digging. Zyro knows it makes sense to split the work, but it doesn't make him any less annoyed. Norgal keeps barking at him to pick up the pace, claiming his seals won't be able to blast through the rock if Zyro's digging is half-assed. Zyro snaps back that they've been digging almost non-stop since yesterday. He's reached his limit for royal attitude. He looks over at another guy named Tatsuya, who is also digging away, trying to get some backup on how hard they're working. Tatsuya is just a machine. He's hunched over, repeatedly slamming his shovel into the dirt without saying a single word. This is Tatsuya, another member of Unit 9004. He looks pretty rough under that hat, with wide, glassy eyes and bandages all over his face. Zyro looks at him and remembers that nobody even knows Tatsua's real name. He's a hero just like the rest of them, but there's something hollow about him. Turns out Tatsuya is the longest serving member because he's died and been resurrected so many times that he's lost his mind. He can't think for himself anymore, he just follows orders like a zombie. Suddenly, a gust of wind whips through the tunnel as someone notices Zero is having a hard time. Zero looks surprised by the sudden voice. It's Tierda. She's sitting on some crates, holding her own pickaxe and offering to trade places with Zyro because she's got energy to spare. She's being way too cheerful for a dark cave. Zyro just gives her a flat no. He tells her that if she's that bored, she should go take a nap instead of bothering him. Tierda gets all pouty. She thinks Zyro should rely on his goddess more, especially since she hasn't done anything yet to earn her praise. She's obsessed with being told she's doing a good job. Zyro keeps his head down and tells her he'll give her all the praise she wants as long as she just stays put and keeps sitting there. In his head, Zyro is being tactical. They're in a dangerous zone and could be attacked any second. He needs Terita to save her goddess powers for when things actually get hairy. But she doesn't get the tactical part. She's just shocked and frustrated that she isn't getting to prove how great she is right now. Norgol jumps in to suck up to her, of course. He calls her the pillar of protection for his country and apologizes for the inconvenience of her being stuck in a boring tunnel. Zyro is just over the whole conversation. He literally begs her to just sit down and be quiet so he can focus on not dying from exhaustion. Terida asks about Norgol's country, and Zyro just tells her not to let it bother her. He's used to Norgol's delusions by now. She lets out a dramatic sigh and agrees to just watch over the work of man for now. She's so dramatic, I love it. Zyro looks at his team of self-proclaimed king, a mindless resurrected guy, and himself. It's a pretty weird squad to be sent on a mission like this. At least Dada isn't here. Zyro is relieved he doesn't have to deal with that guy's sticky fingers, making things even worse while they're digging. Suddenly, a voice calls out Zyro's full name, catching him completely off guard. He looks up, alert. A group of holy knights comes marching into the camp looking all serious in their full armor. They finally arrived. Leading them is Captain Kivia. She's got a stern look on her face and comments on how hard Zero and his crew appear to be working. Taurida chimes in, suggesting that Kivia and her knights should take a break at their camp. Zyro adds that they have to work hard unless they want to end up dead. Terita is getting annoyed now. She tells Kivia that her persistence is starting to aggravate her and that she must stay here to watch over her knight, Joro. Kivia starts to protest, calling her Pataush Kivia, but she gets cut off before she can finish her sentence. Norgol stands up and starts pointing his finger like a true king. He tells Kivia her loyalty is great, but since the goddess wants to be on the front line, he's dismissing Kivia's appeal. He tells her to go fulfill her duty. Kivia is just standing there with her mouth hanging open. She's totally stunned by this random guy acting like he's her boss. She looks at Relio, wondering if Norgol has brain damage or something from a resurrection. Zyro just tells her to nod and agree, saying Norgol has always been like this. Kivia finally composes herself and says she's surprised things are going according to schedule, since she heard this unit was unpredictable. Zyro glares and says the only unpredictable one is Dada, who he calls a clown. Ouch, the roast is real. But then Zyro's expression changes. He's got something serious on his mind. Kivia actually apologizes. She says she heard that stealing the goddess was all Dada's idea, and that Zyro only made the pact to save them. She's being surprisingly reasonable. She looks Zyro in the eye and tells him they're allies now, so she expects him to explain himself clearly from here on out. No more secrets. Zyro looks back at her, looking a bit surprised by her change in attitude. He smirks and calls her ally, then asks if they can get some booze with their rations now. Krivia gets all flustered and angry, yelling that it's unbelievable. Kivia snaps back to professionalism, rustling a map and telling everyone there's no time for chit-chat. She's here to give them their next task. She holds up the map. But, guys, it looks like a bunch of random scribbles in boxes. She wants them to connect the paths to the north from their current spot. Zyro stares at the map with wide, confused eyes. He's trying so hard to make sense of the drawings as Kivia explains using landmarks. Zyro points at a box and asks if it's a room or a door. Kivia just says yes and, like it's totally obvious. It is definitely not obvious, Kivia. Zyro points to a weird shape in the corner and asks what that dog is. Kivia tells him it's a mining cart. I mean, if you squint, maybe? Zyro turns to Tiarita and King Norgal to see what they think of this masterpiece of a map. Nordal is stroking his chin, pretending to be an expert. He thinks it's an abstract painting by some classical artist. Torda is just as lost, wondering if it's a cave painting. Zero thinks one part looks like a person buried in a wall screaming in agony. Norval thinks it looks like a horse being eaten by a snake. Kivia is in the background, literally trembling with rage. She finally bursts. She's not asking for an art critique. She screams that it's clearly the frontline base they plan on setting up. She's totally losing it. Zyro just deadpans that the scribbles make no sense. Kivia looks like she's about to explode from the insult to her drawing skills. The other knights have to literally drag Kivia away while she's still yelling. They're begging her not to listen to the nonsense the penal heroes are spewing. Norgal turns to Zyro and tells him he should learn from Tetsuya less talking, more working. Zyro just looks at him with the most "are you kidding me" expression. Zyro gets back to work, but he's thinking. It's not the hard work that's bothering him, it's something else about this whole mission. There's something weird about how they're handling the tunnel itself. It's got Zero feeling really on edge, like they're missing something huge. He thinks about it. If the mine turned into a ferry and was abandoned, why didn't they just leave it alone? Ferries usually stay put once the land transforms into a dungeon. It's weird to go on the offensive right before winter starts. Usually you just go on the defensive and wait. There shouldn't be any rush to kill the Demon Lord phenomenon right now. Then a dark thought hits him. Is it possible that the same people who set him up to kill Sinerva are behind this too? He starts getting suspicious. What's their goal? Are they just trying to mess with him? Or is there something even bigger happening? He looks over at Teorita, who's still just sitting there being cute. A chilling thought crosses his mind. Are they trying to kill her next? Tarida lets out a big wide yawn, completely oblivious to Zyro's dark theories. She's just tired from all the watching over she's been doing. Zyro shakes it off, telling himself he's probably just overthinking things. He goes back to swinging his pickaxe against the wall. Wait, the rock is starting to crumble. He's finally breaking through something. Zyro peers through a hole he's made and realizes he's found the other side of the wall. Progress at last. But as soon as he breaks through, a giant, segmented insect leg bursts out of the hole. Something big is on the other side, and it's not friendly. It's a boggart. A massive centipede-like monster comes crashing through the rocks, and Zyro looks genuinely freaked out. These things are underground fairies, and they're nasty. Norgol yells at Zyro to be careful. He's worried that using a big seal attack like Zatfinda in such a small space might blow the whole team to bits. Suida was already on the move, dodging as more monsters start appearing. He knows the risks, but he doesn't have much of a choice. Suddenly, Tatsuya leaps forward. He's swinging his giant axe with incredible force, ready to take on the boggarts head-on. Tatsuya looks totally intense, his eyes wide and teeth bared. He lets out a guttural sound as he prepares to strike. There are centipedes everywhere. They're swarming Tatsuya as he stands his ground in the middle of the tunnel. Tatsuya is a beast. He slices right through one of the centipedes, cutting it clean in half with one massive swing of his axe. He's moving so fast, his axe is just a blur as he cleaves through another monster. Dark fluid is splashing everywhere as he tears them apart. We get a close-up of Tatsuya's face, looks totally focused, almost like he's in a trance. He's built for this kind of brutal combat. One of the boggarts tries to strike, but Tatsuya hits it so hard its shell starts to crack under the impact. The rock wall behind them starts to spiderweb with cracks from the sheer force of the battle. The whole tunnel is shaking. Tatsuya slams his weapon down, crushing another monster into the ground with a massive impact that sends rocks flying everywhere. Zero, Tiorita, and Norgal can only watch from a distance, completely stunned by the sheer violence of Tatsuya's fighting style. The tunnel is littered with dead boggarts. Tatsuya stands over the remains, holding his axe, while Zero and Norgal look on, totally speechless. Tatsuya stands there with his back to them, perfectly still after all that action. It's a bit eerie how quickly he goes from 100 to 0. He lets out a small "guh" as he stalks, his glassy eyes staring at nothing. He's completely drained of any emotion. Zyro and the others are just staring at him, realizing once again that Tatsuya isn't really all there. It's a pretty sobering moment. Norgal tries to break the tension by praising Tetsua's extraordinary close combat skills. He calls him his elite, trying to take credit for Tatsua's work as usual. They move further into the tunnel Tatsu cleared out. It's pitch black ahead, and they need some light to see where they're going. Someone presses a finger onto a small sacred seal on top of a lantern. You can see the intricate flower patterns starting to glow. The lantern flares to life with the soft light, casting a warm glow on the hand that activated it. The light reveals a much larger cavern area with wooden supports. Zyro and the team look around, realizing they found a good spot. Norgal declares that this will be their frontline base. Zero looks skeptical, but Norgal is already giving orders to start setting up camp. Zyro sighs and starts getting to work, but he has that feeling that things are still way too quiet, and he's right. Hidden in the shadows, two dark figures with glowing white eyes are watching them from behind the rocks. Creepy. Back at the new camp, everyone is busy. Zero and Tatsuya are setting up more wooden supports while Norval works on something else. They're really turning this cave into a base. Zyro finishes tying up some logs and thinks that should be enough for now. He's a total pro at this construction stuff. Suddenly, Tayurita calls out his name, sounding super excited. Zyro looks over, wondering what she's up to now. She's holding a big pot of food. She's beaming, telling everyone it's their lucky day because she made them a snack. It looks like a bunch of boiled vegetables or maybe dumplings. Chapter 8 starts with a nice little scene of Zyro helping Tayurita prepare the food. He's showing her how to use a knife properly, which is surprisingly wholesome for these two. Tatsuya is absolutely inhaling the food. He's got both hands full and is munching away like he hasn't eaten in years. I guess all that axe swinging builds up an appetite. Tayurita looks over at Zyro with big, hopeful eyes and asks him what he thinks. Zyro, mouth half full, just gives her a casual, "Yeah, it's good." She looks so happy about the tiny bit of praise. Norgal is shouting again, of course. He's complaining that these military provisions aren't nearly enough to fill their stomachs and wants to know where the Minister of Finance is. He's really leaning into the king persona today. He's sitting at a stone table with the others, ranting about how the budget needs to be properly investigated at the royal palace. Zyro just ignores him and keeps eating. Tayurita leans in and asks Zero how the mission is actually going, now that they've had a chance to settle in. Zyro explains they had two tasks. The first was making the route for Kivia's 13th Order of Holy Knights, and the second was setting up this frontline base. They finished making sacred seal fences to defend against fairies, which should keep them safe while they sleep. It's a solid defense. They've also set up all their supplies like food and weapons in these ornate-looking chests. Everything is ready for the knights to move in. So now, all they have to do is wait for Kivia to show up and go defeat the Demon Lord. Zyro looks like he's actually looking forward to the break. But then Tayurita lets out a huge whoa. She spotted one of the supply chests and is totally mesmerized by it. She runs over to a small, beautiful-looking box. Zero asks if that's where the supplies are, looking a bit confused by how fancy it is. It's a really elaborate chest with swirls and engravings. It definitely doesn't look like standard military gear. Norgal suddenly jumps in and tells Tayurita to wait. He says approaching it without the right equipment is way too dangerous. Uh-oh, what did he do? Norgal picks up a small stone from the floor, looking very serious as he prepares to show them something. He flicks the stone toward the fancy chest, telling everyone to observe. This is definitely a booby trap, isn't it? Yap. As soon as the stone hits, multiple spears burst out of the ground in front of the chest, and a huge blast of flame erupts from the keyhole. It's like a defensive fireworks show. Tayurita's eyes are practically popping out of her head. She's completely terrified by the sudden explosion and the sharp metal poles everywhere. Norgal is super proud of himself. He claims it's one of his greatest works. Any creature that gets close will be skewered and then melted by flames that can liquefy a rock. Zero is just shouting, "What the hell?" Norgal presents his invention with a grand flourish, calling it Zolan Volkov, which apparently means the judge of fools. He's so extra! Zyro is losing his mind. He asks Norgal why on earth he would booby-trap the actual supplies that they're supposed to use. Norgal argues that a good supply crate needs to be sturdy with strong defenses so fairies don't destroy them. We see a little drawing of a monster centipede getting frustrated by the chest. Lyro asks the most important question, and how do you disarm it? Norgal just smiles and says he's glad he asked. He pulls out 3 keys and starts explaining a ridiculously complicated process that involves hidden switches in a specific order. He looks like he's having the time of his life, but it's a total disaster waiting to happen. Zyro has heard enough. He tells Tatsuya to grab Norgal so he can take the keys away and put an end to this madness. He's worried Norgal is going to accidentally kill the whole 13th Order. Zyro rubs his head, realizing that even though Norgal is a prodigy, his talents usually just end up getting the team into a lot of trouble. No kidding. Zyro hears Teordita say, "What?" and looks over to see her staring at the chest with a strange look in her eyes. She's actually impressed. She calls it incredible technology and says with her blessing and Zyro's men, nothing can stop them. She's way too easily impressed by dangerous booby traps. She gets right in Zyro's space, looking super hyped up. Zyro just looks back at her with a blank stare, wondering what she's going to suggest next. She asks why they should leave the rest of the mission to Kivia when they could just go defeat the Demon Lord themselves right now. She's feeling very confident all of a sudden. Zyro just turns his head away and gives her another flat no. He's not having it. Teordita follows him as he walks away, arguing that as a goddess, she needs to produce results and show off her authority. She's worried it'll be a violation of their orders if they just sit around. Zyro stops and turns to her, asking why she decided to stick with them then. He points out she can still use her powers even if he isn't right next to her, so why bother hanging out with a criminal unit? Teordita stops in her tracks, looking surprised by the question. She doesn't have a quick answer for that one. She gets angry instead, glaring at him and asking what that's supposed to mean. Is she useless to him? She's definitely taking it personally. Zyro clarifies that's not what he meant and says he's genuinely grateful she came with them. Teordita just asks, right? Still looking a bit suspicious. Teordita tells Zyro that she's noticed he takes a haughty attitude toward them from time to time. She's not happy about being treated like a kid. Zyro doesn't say anything, but his expression is serious. He's got some deep thoughts going on in that spiky-haired head of his. In his head, Yuro admits that he feels sick to his stomach whenever he looks at Teordita. But not because she herself is gross. It's because of whoever created her. He thinks about how goddesses are essentially born just to be praised by humans. We see Teordita struggling to carry a giant log, and it's actually kind of sad when you think about it that way. Some people believe they should respect that desire of goddesses to be helpful. Teordita looks on as Zyro carries a heavy crate. She clearly wants to be useful. But Zyro remembers the previous goddess he served. She told him she'd even be willing to die for mankind. The self-sacrificing nature of these beings is what really bugs him. Teordita calls out, "My knight," which snaps Zyro out of his deep thoughts. She tells him she won't be satisfied until he admits that she, Teordita, is the greatest of all goddesses. She says she'd do anything for that. She even adds, "even if it cost me my life," with a huge, bright smile on her face. It's that exact self-sacrificing attitude that Zyro was just thinking about. Zyro's face is hidden in the shadows as he says her name. You can tell he's feeling really conflicted about her. He thinks about how incredibly guilty he feels using these self-sacrificing goddesses for his own missions. He's cut off mid-thought by Norgal calling his name. Norgal is dashing over to a lantern on a crate looking very urgent. Something is definitely happening. He shouts that Kivia is sending them a distress signal. The lantern is glowing in a specific way that signals trouble. The message says they're being attacked and need backup immediately. The whole team gathers around, realizing the knights are in over their heads. The message adds a chilling detail. They're being attacked by fairies that were once human. That's never a good sign. Zyro and Norgal share a serious look. They both know this is bad. The king persona has finally been dropped for a moment of genuine concern. Tatsuya is growling, his teeth bared. He's ready to go. Even without orders, he knows a fight is coming. Zyro admits he's already exhausted, but they can't just leave the knights to die. Norgal nods in agreement. They're all on the same page for once. The whole crew starts sprinting through the tunnels. Zyro yells, "Let's do this." And Teordita is right there with them, looking more determined than ever. We cut to the knights. One of them is getting slammed into the ground by a powerful blow. It's total chaos. The knights are surrounded. There are at least 100 knockers, those humanoid fairies, and the soldiers are struggling to hold them back much longer. A close-up of a knocker's hand, it's got long, sharp claws and looks like it could rip through armor easily. One knight is screaming as a knocker leaps right at him. These things are fast and terrifying. Captain Kivia is right in the thick of it. We see a close-up of her eye under her helmet, looking intense as she realizes how bad the situation is. Kivia is fighting back. She's got her sword out and is taking on multiple knockers at once, but she's being pushed back against the wall. She manages to land a slash on one of the monsters, dark fluid spraying as she cuts through it. She's a skilled fighter, but there are just too many of them. Kivia screams at her troops to remain calm and not to give up. She's doing her best to lead, but things are looking pretty grim for the 13th Order. Suddenly, an axe comes flying in. Tatsuya has arrived, and he immediately cleaves a knocker in two. He's not wasting any time. Zyro smirks as he arrives with the others, telling Kivia it looks like she's having a rough time. He always has to get a little dig in, doesn't he? Kivia looks relieved, but still yells at Zyro that he took his sweet time getting there. They've got a real rivalry going on. Tayarita leaps into the air, calling out, "My knight!" She's ready to show off her goddess duty and save everyone. She looks super pumped. Zyro turns toward Kivia and tells her to give the order. He's ready to use his sacred seals and really clear the room. Kivia gives a small smile. She's glad to see her reinforcements, even if they are a bunch of criminals. Zyro gives the tactical command for everyone to go around and attack from the opposite side. He's taking charge of the battlefield. The knockers are screeching and snarling as they prepare to take on the newcomers. They don't look intimidated at all. Tatsuya lets out a huge BW aha as he charges forward, his axe raised high. He's going full berserker mode. Tatsuya delivers a massive whack to a knocker's head. The impact is so hard it probably shattered the monster's skull. He doesn't stop there, he follows up with a slash that cuts through another monster's neck. He is just a whirlwind of destruction right now. Tatsuya leaps into the air for his next strike, looking like a total force of nature. The knockers don't stand a chance against him. Zyro looks at the scene and smirks. He thinks about how Norgal's sacred seal tuning is the reason Tatsuya can slice through the monster's mineral-like skin so easily. Tayarita grabs onto Zyro's shoulder, looking eager, and asks for her orders. She's finally ready to earn that praise she won so much. Zyro tells her he only needs one sword for now and that she should hold back. He doesn't want her overusing her power yet. Tayarita is absolutely shocked. "That's it," she screams. She was expecting to do something way more epic and flashy. She reluctantly agrees, looking super disappointed as she says, "Very well." Poor girl just wants to be a hero. She summons a single ornate sword into her hand. Even her small efforts look pretty impressive with all that glowing energy around her. Zyro launches the sword forward. It flies through the air right toward a cluster of knockers that were about to swarm the knights. A massive boom. The sword explodes on impact, creating a huge cloud of smoke and fire that wipes out a whole group of monsters at once. Kivia seizes the moment and shouts for her knights to counterattack while the monsters are disoriented by the blast. The knights are all fired up now, ready to finish off the remaining knockers and take back the tunnel. The knights let out a roar as they charge forward with their swords raised. They're finally making some real progress thanks to the backup. One knight lands a clean slash on a knocker, looking much more confident than he was just a few minutes ago. The soldiers are working together now, using their shields and spears to keep the monsters at bay and finish them off one by one. Tayarita is watching them with a wide-eyed whoa. She looks genuinely impressed by the knights' teamwork. Zyro just looks on with a smug little grin. The knights are using a defensive seal compound that's specifically designed for surprise attacks on goddesses. It's clear they were prepared for a very different kind of fight. The battle is over, dead knockers are scattered all over the cave floor, the area is finally quiet again. Kivia walks over to Zyro, her armor scuffed up from the fight. She's finally ready to talk again. She thanks Zero and his unit for coming to their aid, admitting they couldn't have done it without them. It's a pretty big admission from a Holy Knight captain. The other knights are standing in the background, looking at the penal heroes with a mix of fear and suspicion. They still don't trust them one bit. Zero notices their stares. He knows exactly why they're looking at him and his team like that. He gets it. He's the goddess killer. Norgal's a terrorist, and Tatsuya fights like a wild beast. It's totally natural for the proper soldiers to be afraid of them, but then he notices something else that catches his eye. He gives a sideways glance toward the ground. A group of knights is huddled together, looking down at one of the fallen fairies. Their expressions are dark and troubled. Zyro and Norgal look at each other, both realizing that something about these fairies is making the knights extra uneasy. Tarita is just smiling, totally unaware of the tension. Zyro wonders what the knights are glaring at her for. All he can see in their eyes is darkness. Is it because they were keeping her asleep in that coffin instead of using her as a weapon? Zyro can't think of a single reason why they despise her so much. Norgal lets out an He's thinking about the same thing as Euro. Something is definitely weird with how the knights view Tiertata. They look at the human-type fairies and notice they still retain a lot of their human features. Norgal estimates they must have turned within the last 5 days, but here's the problem. These tunnels were sealed shut over a month ago. In other words, Kivia confirms it. She's found a survivor from the mines. The survivor is a scruffy-looking miner who's trembling with fear. He's covered in dirt and looks like he's been through hell. He tells them there are a few dozen others who worked in the mines but didn't manage to escape in time and are still in hiding. Zero and Norgal look completely shocked. Zyro yells that he thought everyone was evacuated, but Kivia says the reports lied. Now she has to figure out how to deal with all these trapped people. Zyro lets out a frustrated "Tets." This is exactly the kind of complication he didn't want to deal with. He whispers that they don't have the time or resources for a rescue mission. Are they really supposed to save everyone before they even fight the Demon Lord? Kivia says the people in power would never allow it. They'd just order her to abandon the miners and carry out the mission as planned. She looks really torn about it. Zyra realizes that if the Holy Knights suffered casualties trying to save miners, it wouldn't make sense to the higher-ups. They'll just have to deal with it after the Demon Lord is dead. Suddenly, Norgal steps forward and starts shouting. He declares that these are his loyal subjects, who toiled in the mine for the sake of his kingdom. He throws his arm up and yells that they must be saved at all costs, and that it's time for action. He's going full heroic king mode again. Zyro and Tivia both look at him with the most wide-eyed, shocked expressions. They were definitely not expecting Norgal to be the one demanding a rescue mission. So Norgal is standing there in the mine, surrounded by his loyal subjects and the Holy Knights, giving this big speech about his kingdom. He gets super pumped up, pounding his chest and shouting that it's time for some serious action to save his people. Chapter 9 kicks off with Norgal sitting on a fancy throne like he's actual royalty, even though he's technically a criminal. The Holy Knights are all sweating and whispering to each other, looking totally confused by what's going on. Zyro just hangs his head and sighs. He's clearly used to Norgal's dramatic delusions by now. One of the miners is practically sobbing, begging Norgal to save his friends who are still stuck deeper in the tunnels. Norgal gives a big toothy grin and tells him not to worry, because they're heading out right this second. But Kivia steps in and shuts that down immediately. She says she can't give permission because the mission is the priority. The miner is desperate now, shouting that his friends are literally dying while they stand around talking. Norgal snaps back at her, declaring that he's the king and his orders are the only ones that matter. Kivia looks absolutely stunned. She can't believe a penal hero is talking to her like this. She turns her gaze to Extro and asks him what he thinks about all this. She's worried about the risk of deviating from the plan to save the survivors first. Zyra looks her dead in the eye and asks if she's suggesting they just ignore orders entirely. Kivia looks torn, reminding him that as a holy knight, she's supposed to protect people's lives. Zyra stays calm and apologizes for the interruption. Suddenly, this priest dude walks up and says they don't even need to ask Zyro's opinion. Norgal is instantly offended, demanding to know who this new guy is and why he's talking. The guy reveals he's a priest, sent by the temple, specifically to tune the sacred seals for the squad. Norgal is fuming, saying it's unforgivable to abandon the people in the mine. He screams that ignoring his royal decree is straight-up treason. The priest just sighs, lamenting that Norgal, once a genius of the academy, has fallen so far into madness. Norgal goes off the rails, swinging a pickaxe and accusing them of plotting to overthrow the government. Zyro has to jump in and grab him, telling His Majesty to chill out before things get worse. Norgal is still shouting about violations of orders being synonymous with death. Zyro notices that Kivia is looking pretty miserable. She's being isolated from her own unit just for wanting to help. He realizes the elites in this kingdom only care about their noble status and don't want to risk anything for commoners. Zyra looks over at Torita, who has been standing by silently this whole time. He watches the 13th goddess, noticing her long white hair drifting in the drafty tunnel. She hasn't said a word, but Zyro can tell exactly what she's thinking just by looking at her. He thinks to himself that goddesses live for human praise, but they're also terrified of being rejected. He knows deep down she wants to save those miners, but is scared no one will listen to her opinion. Zyro reflects on his past, thinking that the old him, the Holy Knight, would have saved them without a second thought. He remembers his time as a knight when he truly believed killing demon lords would create a peaceful future. Everything changed when he was set up and ended up in chains, realizing the system was rotten. He admits to himself that the ideals he used to fight for are long gone. Back in the present, Norgal is still screaming like a lunatic about people shaking hands with death. Zero looks at the priests and the other knights, disgusted by how they only care about themselves. It all just really pisses him off, seeing the hypocrisy on display. A dangerous little smirk starts to form on Zyro's face. He shouts at Norgal to arrest the men, causing everyone to freeze in surprise. Then, out of nowhere, Zero winds up and clocks Nargal right across the face. Kivia's eyes go wide. She totally didn't see that coming. The priest and the other knights are just as shocked by Gyro's sudden violence. Zyro stands tall and shouts that they, the Penal heroes, are going to be the ones to save the survivors. Teyurida looks up at him, her eyes sparkling with hope and admiration. Hivia stutteringly asks, "What?" as she tries to process his decision. Zyro explains that the penal unit will take care of the rescue alone since they've already finished their other prep work. Kivia screams at him, saying the three of them will just get killed by the Demon Lord phenomenon before they even reach the miners. Zyro tells her that if things go bad, she should just use the terrain seal and bury them all alive with the monsters. Kivia looks absolutely horrified by how casually he's willing to die. The priest actually smirks, saying that plan sounds pretty good to him. Norgal surprisingly grabs Aishrael's hand and laughs, saying he's impressed by the initiative. With that settled, Jorl and his crew start dashing down into the darkness of the lower tunnels. Torta tackle hugs Zyro from behind, shouting that this is why he's her knight. She's ecstatic, telling him his bravery proves she was right to choose him. She looks back and shouts to Kivia and the priest that they owe her big time once she saves everyone. Zyro suddenly reaches out and grabs Teorda, stopping her mid-shout. He starts hoisting her up, telling Kivia that they're taking the goddess along for the ride. Teorda is completely stunned, her eyes popping out as she wonders what he's doing. Zyro whispers that the knights won't dare bury them alive if the goddess is with them. Smart move, right? He smirks at the knights, saying he looks forward to a warm welcome if they actually survive this. The scene shifts deeper into the mine, where the tracks are broken and everything looks like a total mess. Giant, centipede-like monsters are crawling all over the mining equipment and debris. Something heavy thuds against a wooden crate, making a hollow sound. The survivors inside jump back in fear, let out an audible eek as they huddle together. They're terrified, crying that it's over for them and their walls won't hold much longer. The captain of the miners is sweating bullets, cursing their luck that no help ever came. Suddenly, one of the miners slowly stands up, his face looking totally vacant and spooky. He whispers that he can hear a voice calling to him from the dark. The other miners look at him in absolute horror, realizing what's about to happen. He starts tottering forward like a zombie, saying, "I have to go." His friends grab him, screaming for him to stop, but he struggles, insisting he's being called. Another miner is crying, saying this is exactly how it happened to all the others who disappeared. He explains that everyone who hears the voice comes back as a hideous monster. Suddenly, a loud crack echoes through the tunnel, making everyone freeze in terror. The miners stare at the ceiling, paralyzed with fear as the sounds of breaking wood continue. The wooden barricades they built start to snap and buckle under immense pressure from outside. They all look toward the breach, expecting the worst as shadows loom over them. But wait, it's not a monster, it's Zyro breaking through the rubble to find them. The miners are completely stunned, staring at him with wide, teary eyes. They ask if he's with the Holy Knights, and Zyro tells them they were sent to save them. The miners are cheering, shouting that they're safe and begging him to get them out. The captain miner looks at Zyro's weapons, a bit confused by what he sees. Zyro drops a bunch of pickaxes and tools in front of them, telling them they all need a weapon to fight. The captain is confused, asking, "Wait," while looking at the gear. He realizes what Zyro is saying and asks in disbelief if they're expected to fight those monsters themselves. Zyro bluntly tells them that his team can't protect everyone on their own in this situation. He tells them straight up, if anyone doesn't want to fight, let him know so he can put them out of their misery now. All the miners start shivering and sweating at Zyro's terrifyingly cold ultimatum. Norgal steps forward and tells them not to worry, because he's enhanced all their weapons personally. He shouts at his loyal subjects to arm themselves, promising they'll be rewarded once they escape. The miners are just blinking at him, wondering who this King Norgal guy even is. A low rumble starts to shake the entire tunnel, cutting the conversation short. Zyro grinds his teeth and tells everyone that the enemies are finally here. He starts barking orders, telling Tatsuya to take the front while he covers the rear. Zyro's hand, covered in bandages, reaches out for his weapon as the monsters close in. Zyro bellows, Arian, as the miners start charging through the tunnel with their pickaxes. Norgal shouts to Zyro that if things go wrong, he'll be the first one to die. Zyro just gives a sarcastic little smile and thanks him for the encouragement. Norgal keeps yelling that their lives are meaningless compared to his subjects, which is classic Norgal. Zyro looks at the back of Norgal's head while he's ranting, looking almost impressed. He grins, thinking to himself that those are actually the words of a true king. Suddenly, more cracks spread across the stone walls with a loud noise. The miners gasp as a monster's leg bursts through the rock right in front of them. Zyro orders everyone to get their shovels ready and hit anything that shows its head. He narrows his eyes, ready for the impact as the creatures emerge. The miners actually do it. They swarm a giant centipede, hacking at its segments with their pickaxes. The monster lets out a high-pitched screech as it gets battered by the workers. The miners are screaming in terror, but they aren't stopping, which is what matters. Zyro shouts at them not to stop because the next wave is already on its way. Multiple giant centipedes explode out of a hole in the cave wall, surrounding the group. The miners start panicking again, shouting that there are just too many of them to handle. Zyro moves in like a blur, swinging his weapons with expert precision. He starts driving his daggers deep into the thick shells of the centipedes, spraying black blood everywhere. A massive explosion of black smoke and debris fills the tunnel as Zyro's seals trigger. The miners are coughing and hacking as they dash through the dark, trying to stay together. Tatsuya leaps out of the smoke and slams his giant axe down, completely crushing a monster's head. The miners stare in awe at the sheer brutality of their savior, but the stress is getting to them. One miner falls to his knees, crying that he can't do this anymore. Zyro turns and screams, "Get up!" with terrifying intensity. The miners all jump in fear, their faces dripping with sweat and terror. Zyro stands before them and tells them he'll show them the way out, but they have to protect themselves. He leans in close and growls that they absolutely have to fight if they want to survive this nightmare. A miner screams, "If you want to live," back at his comrades, rallying them. The miners look at each other, their fear turning into a grim, desperate determination. They all grip their tools tightly, ready to face the horde again. Meanwhile, Kivia and her holy knights are marching through a different, web-filled tunnel. One knight asks if the miners will be okay after that loud noise, but another tells him to shut up and focus on the demon lord. Kivia smiles to herself, saying they have the devil's luck and will probably pull it off. She gets a serious look as she considers the danger they're all in. She looks up, silently asking if Goddess Torta is doing her part. Chapter 10 begins with a badass shot of Zyro crouched on the ground, dagger ready, surrounded by monster blood. Norgal is shouting at the top of his lungs, ordering his subjects to attack the encroaching monsters. Miners charge forward, their faces twisted with a mix of fury and pure terror. They clash with the centipedes, pickaxes swinging wildly as they try to push them back. A centipede lunges forward with its mandibles wide open, about to bite a worker. Suddenly, a giant axe blade whizzes through the air with a powerful whoosh. Tatsuya absolutely wrecks the monster, his axe cutting clean through its body in one go. He lets out a pained gah as he exerts himself to keep the line held. The monsters are still scrabbling all over the walls, trying to find an opening. Zyro's weapon starts to glow with heat as he tells Tatsuya to stand back. Zyro unleashes a massive technique, Zai-Fend, causing a huge blast in the tunnel. The monster's carapaces start to crackle and burn from the intense heat of the seal. Zyro's hand reaches out for another weapon, but he's looking strained. He clicks his tongue as his dagger shatters from the pressure of the attack. Zyro calls for a break, telling everyone to start bandaging themselves as they're bleeding. The miners catch their breath while Zyro wonders why they were left behind in the first place. He figures the kingdom had a rescue priority, and the working class was just at the bottom of the list. He thinks about the constant conflict between the temple and the military that's tearing the kingdom apart. The miner captain approaches Zyro and tells him there were originally 50 of them. He describes how one man started hearing voices at night before he vanished and turned into a monster. Zyro realizes that demon blight is affecting the mine and messing with people's minds. The captain looks at him with a desperate, tiny hope in his eyes. He asks Zyro if his friends can be turned back into humans once they get out of here. Zyro goes silent, his expression darkening as he looks away. He tells them the brutal truth once they're corrupted. There's no way to save them. He's sorry. The captain is devastated, his face contorting as he whispers, "What?" Someone shouts Zero's name as another heavy thud echoes through the cave. Norgal is looking at a map, shouting that this isn't the way they came into the mine. Zyro admits he purposely chose a different, longer route to the exit. He shows them the plan. The Holy Knights will distract the main forces while they sneak away. Zyro warns that they have a higher chance of running into boggarts this way, and he's running low on knives. Norgal glances at him, noticing that Zyro is really pushing himself to his limit. The miners are slumped against the cave walls, looking completely exhausted and beaten down. They're covered in dirt and blood, their morale sinking lower by the second. Zyro knows they're fatigued, and he worries how much longer they can actually keep moving. He stares into the darkness, his own face looking worn and grim. He calls out to the men, telling them that even though they're resting, they need to listen to him. He tells them straight, the next wave is going to be massive, and they can't just keep running away. Zyro says they need to create a separate force to beat the odds stacked against them. The miners look at each other in fear, none of them wanting to volunteer for a suicide mission. They whisper to each other, looking at the ground as the tension in the air thickens. Total silence falls over the group as Zyro waits for someone to step up. Zyro thinks to himself that if no one volunteers, he'll just have to act as the decoy alone. Suddenly, a whole bunch of hands shoot into the air. They're actually doing it. Zyro gives a confident little grin and asks if they're really sure they can handle it. One miner says that if Zyro thinks they have a chance, then they're willing to take it. The miners admit they've heard stories about the Penal heroes before, how they're the vilest scum. The captain looks at the sacred seal around Zyro's neck, finally understanding what he is. Zyro just scoffs and asks if he finally knows what they are now. He says sarcastically that he's sorry to disappoint them since they're just criminals after all, but the miner captain shouts that they were the only ones who actually came back to save them. Zyro is taken aback, his eyes widening slightly at the captain's words. The captain says that no matter how they die, it's better than rotting in the dark, waiting for help that never came. Zyro smiles properly now and tells him to shut up because he's not letting anyone die today. Norgal jumps in, laughing that they all need to live so they can keep serving his kingdom. The ground starts to rumble again, and Zyro warns everyone that they're here, and there's more than last time. One of the miners shouts that they're doing this for their comrades who didn't make it. The miners let out a roar of "Yee-H!" as they prepare to get out of the mine alive. Jiro looks totally ready for battle, his gaze sharper than ever. He points to the right and tells Tetsuya to lead the men down that path immediately. Another giant centipede leg smashes through the ceiling, raining rocks down on the team. A set of huge, multi-jointed legs bursts through the rock with a loud crumble. The tunnel is suddenly swarming with the giant insects, and someone screams that they're trapped. Zyro shouts for the miners to draw the enemies toward them while his unit handles the main group. One of the miners looks completely shocked, shouting BBU2 as he sees the horde. He points behind them, screaming that there are enemies coming from the rear too. Zyro grips a glowing seal and tells him not to worry about those ones. With a massive boom, Zyro clears a path right through the front line of monsters. More and more creatures are rumbling through the cracks in the ceiling. It's like a tide of bugs. Zyro grinds his teeth, realizing they just keep coming no matter how many he kills. He looks back as Nurgle reaches out to hand him something new. Norgal is shouting for Zyro to use a new weapon he's just finished prepping. He's created a makeshift spear out of mining tools and tuned it with a powerful seal. Zyro gets that scary look in his eyes again, totally focused on the fight. He grabs the spear with a firm grip, ready to put it to use. He drives the spear right through a centipede segment, blood spraying as it screeches. A miner slams his pickaxe into a monster's leg with a loud slink against the shell. The monster collapses with a heavy thud as the miner manages to trip it up. Norgal is screaming orders, telling the men to fall back and lure the enemy closer to them. The miners are clenching their teeth, doing their best to stay brave despite the horror. They shout that they're putting all their faith in Zyro and his team as the monsters scuttle toward them. Zyro is holding the line, watching as the centipedes charge the group of miners. Norgal bellows men to keep his workers focused on the defensive maneuver. The miners stand shoulder to shoulder, sweating and terrified but not backing down. They all grip their tools until their knuckles turn white, waiting for the impact. The two groups clash. It's a chaotic mess of pickaxes and giant insect legs. One monster gets whacked and goes flying into the cave wall with a crunch. More of the creatures are scuttling through the gaps, trying to get around them. Zyro is stabbing wildly with his spear, shouting "Attack!" as he tries to hold the breach. Tatsuya lets out a guttural roar as he holds back a group of monsters single-handedly. The miners behind him look on in shock, unable to believe someone can fight like that. Suddenly, all the monsters just freeze. They stop moving entirely and start twitching. Zyro senses it immediately, his face turning pale as he realizes something big is coming. A series of heavy, rhythmic thuds start echoing through the tunnel, making the pebbles on the ground dance. A miner gets snatched up and lets out a horrific scream as he's dragged into the dark. Tatsuya is clenching his teeth, his face covered in blood as he tries to reach his comrade. More centipedes are knocked aside with a heavy thud as something massive pushes through them. The miners start cheering, thinking help has finally arrived from the main group. Zoro grins, saying it worked. As the strategy finally plays out, the narration explains the pincer trick. They fell back to lure the enemy while another unit attacked from behind. Zero thinks now's my chance as he prepares his next move. He winds up his arm, his fingers glowing with power as he prepares to unleash a finishing blow. He screams, "In hell!" as another massive blast rocks the cavern, obliterating a group of monsters. The miner captain is laughing with joy, thinking that Zyro's strategy has actually saved them. Zero points forward and tells Tatsuya to keep drawing the remaining enemies toward them. He shouts into the dark, "Over here! I'm your biggest threat." He charges back into the fray, spear in hand, for one final straight-up brawl. A monster lunges from the side, its claw grabbing Zyro's shoulder with a sharp pain. Zyro is slammed into the ground with a heavy thud, gasping for air. He's at his limit, thinking his heart is about to explode from the exhaustion. A centipede hisses right in his face, its huge maw open and ready to bite. Zyro just snarls back, telling it to bring it on and make the fight fun at least. A huge claw whizzes through the air, barely missing Zyro as he rolls away. One of the miners lets out a Gugh as he gets bitten by a smaller monster. Zyro looks over, his face etched with worry as he asks if the guy is okay. Suddenly, Zyro is surrounded by multiple giant monsters, their maws wide and terrifying. He realizes he's in a really bad spot, swearing under his breath as he prepares for the end. A bunch of swords suddenly rain down from above, impaling the monsters right through their open mouths. The creatures are pinned to the ground by dozens of blades appearing out of nowhere. Zyro stares in total shock, his eyes wide as he looks at the magical swords. More and more ornate swords clink as they land in the dirt, creating a literal forest of blades. Zyro whispers, "Swords?" He knows exactly who could do something like this. At the end of the tunnel, a bright light appears and a small figure starts walking toward them. A voice calls out an apology for keeping everyone waiting. It's Teirda. She makes a grand entrance, declaring that the goddess of swords has arrived and telling Zyro he can squeal with joy now. An afterward page shows a cool black and white sketch of the dark, abandoned mine shaft. In an omake, Teirda is super excited to show off her cooking skills to the survivors. Zyro looks skeptical and asks her if she can even handle a basic kitchen knife. Teirda gets annoyed and summons a massive, glowing broadsword instead of a knife. She actually manages to dice the vegetables perfectly with the giant sword, surprisingly enough. Zyro is sweating now, watching her drop even more huge swords into the cooking process. Toyita asks, "What's this?" and Zyro tells her she needs to peel it first. She ends up overcutting everything until it's just a pile of mushy bits. She presents a giant pot of goddess and knight soup to the miners, who are actually pretty happy to eat anything. Next make Trap 2. This is gonna be good. Zyro is complaining that Dada's thieving habit is getting really out of hand lately. He asks Norgal if there's any way to teach him a lesson, and Norgal looks like he's already plotting. Norgal gives a big laugh and says Zero should leave it to his royal wisdom. A few minutes later, Zyro hears a noise and realizes someone has finally tripped the trap. Norgal is super proud of himself, shouting, "It worked." They walk over to see a large woven basket upside down on the ground with someone under it. Zyro facepalms because the trap was literally just a carrot under a propped-up basket. It's way too obvious. Dada is trapped under there, flapping around, while Zyro tells him to stay away from suspicious things. Next make Stealing 2. Dada is lying in bed, bored out of his mind, because he's not allowed to go on missions right now. Suddenly, a nurse in the background screams that all the medicine in the cabinet has gone missing. Dada casually thinks to himself that he'll just go for a little walk around the area. He's trying to hide a heavy wooden crate under his bed, looking very guilty. The crate is full of sparkling medicine bottles and jars that he definitely borrowed. He suddenly gets a sharp pain and starts screaming for someone to come treat him. His eyes turn into stars when he sees the shiny bottles, even though he's hurting. The doctor tells him it's impossible to treat him because some thief stole all the medicine. Dada just groans in his bed. In the final omake, Torita is looking at some wall paintings and asking Zyro what they are. Zyro is looking at a piece of paper 3 hours later, looking very confused. Kivia is in the background, looking embarrassed and telling Zyro not to say anything unnecessary. She reveals it's a portrait of a certain person she drew herself. Kivia brags that if she actually takes her time, she's a great artist. Juro is not convinced. Juro and Torita look at the drawing with absolute horror and shock on their faces. Kivia is happily scribbling away, totally unaware of how bad her drawing actually is. Saro points at the drawing and asks if it's supposed to be a monster, but Kivia insists it's Torita. What a burn!